Chapter 1459, Thousand Evil Lord and Thousand Evil Army. As the former patriarch of the Chaos Humans, Haze of Chaos' lifelong wish was to defeat the Chaos Beasts and lead the Chaos Humans back to the Chaos Sea, returning to their hometown that they had missed for a long time. Even though the Chaos Patriarch had become Zhou, his wish had not changed. Now that he had finally realized his wish, how could he not be happy and excited? Zhou did not say anything. As a Chaos Human, he could understand his feelings. A moment later, Bai Yun led 2 million god spirits, 100,000 true god tiers, and 100 exalt gods to him. Among them, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom only had 50 million god spirits, 10,000 true god tiers, and 10 supremacies. The remaining god spirits were god spirits from the people of foreign races gathered by the Origin. Origin and Di Huang were among them. Many of these people of foreign race god spirits had already died in the previous battle. However, they had already been revived by the clergymen of the Life Ark and the Resurrection Altar after becoming citizens of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Most of their expressions were a little strange. It was no wonder too. Who would have thought that the enemies who were fighting to the death just now would become comrades who were going to the dangerous battlefield together in the blink of an eye after all? The truth was so unpredictable. At the same time, seeing that all the god spirits had arrived, Zhou Fight did not immediately head to the ultimate void battleground. He first looked around before revealing a satisfied smile. Surrounding these god spirits were 10 Master God Tier Advanced Grade battleships. Among these battleships, other than the Eternal Mothership, the other 9 Master God Tier Advanced Grade battleships were provided by the original Spirit race, the Shepherd's God race, and the Chaos Gods race. These 3 races had already become Zhou's slave race after all. Under his command, it was naturally not a problem for they to take out 9 Master God Tier Advanced Grade cosmic battleships to support him on this trip to the ultimate void battlefield. However, even the 3 races did not have many warships of this level. 9 ships were already the result of them doing their best. Apart from warships, cultivation resources, healing resources, combat resources, food resources, and other war resources were also prepared. They even brought the entire Life Ark over and temporarily placed it in the internal world of the Eternal Mothership. Even though there was not a single clergyman inside, the resurrection altar inside was enough to satisfy the resurrection requirements of the ultimate void battlefield. He didn't have many subordinates this time after all. It was enough to use the resurrection altar. Then, Zhou Fight gave Feng Luo a few more instructions and did not say anything else. He directly opened the Lord interface, opened the ultimate void battlefield function, and clicked on the teleportation. Swoosh! A void vortex that emitted a dark purple light appeared out of thin air in the Chaos Sea. Zhou Fight and all the god spirits flew into it without hesitation and disappeared. Zhou Marshall and the other clones looked expectant when they saw this scene not far away. "It's all up to you this time, the main battle avatar," they muttered to themselves. "Continue to clean up the battlefield and calculate the battle reports. Then, return to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom." Zhou Marshall ordered the soldiers and god spirits. Yes. In the endless void, Zhou Fight, the god spirits, and 10 Master God Tier Advanced Grade cosmic battleships were here. "Where am I?" Zhou Fight was amazed. "Reporting to your majesty." Origin walked over and said respectfully, "We're currently in the void teleportation." The void wherein looks motionless, but it's actually in the process of continuous cross-border teleportation. However, because the teleportation form and method are very stable, it looks like a stable void space. Normally speaking, we need more than an hour to leave the Supreme Great Cosmos and descend into the ultimate void battlefield. More than an hour, Zhou Fight was surprised. This teleportation method was personally created by the Supreme Will, but even the Supreme Will needed more than an hour to send them to the ultimate void battlefield. It seemed that just as the other party had said, even, he could not send too many troops to the ultimate void battlefield at once. Do you know Lord of 10,000 Evils and 1,000 Evil Army? Zhou Feit asked. Reporting to your majesty, I do know a little. This is because I've participated in the war with the ultimate void creatures 3 times in the past. During this period, I've cooperated with the 1,000 Evils army and chatted with Lord of 10,000 Evils a few times. Origin said. Me too. Di Huang was not to be outdone. Let's talk about them. Zhou Feit was interested. Even though Lord of 10,000 Evils is the reserve army of the Lord of all races in the name of Demon Lord, the other party is actually a kind and lawful God spirit. Origin's first sentence shocked Zhou Feit. Lord of 10,000 Evils was actually a God spirit from the kind and lawful faction. Origin also saw his Lord's expression. He explained with a smile, Your Majesty, the reason why the Lord of 10,000 Evils has such a title is because the other party walks the path of a Lord. It's the path of sealing thousands of demons and turning them into his own. He rose to power when he was weak. Along the way, almost everything he did was to seal evil demons. It was also because of this that he had accumulated almost a sea of evil subordinates. It's precisely because of this that he has the title of Lord of 10,000 Evils. It's also because of his experience of sealing demons and vanquishing evil that this divine being is a completely good person. At least it's better than the other 2 Lord of all races reserve armies. Origin deliberated for a moment and said. As for his evil army, the most important combat soldier type is naturally the supreme soldier type, the ultimate evil spirit that he is famous for. The ultimate evil spirits under him are extremely good at mental and willpower attacks. At the same level, even other supreme soldier types will accidentally fall into the trap of these ultimate evil spirits. Besides these 2 methods, their other methods are extremely varied and strange. Your Majesty, you have to be on guard when the time comes. Even though Lord of 10,000 Evils is a kind supreme god of the Order faction, however, His Majesty and him are competitors after all. In the face of the temptation of the position of Lord of all races, even a god spirit like he might have evil thoughts and degenerate into the true Lord of 10,000 Evils. His Majesty has to be wary. Origin said with a solemn expression. Zhou Feit nodded. Then, he chatted with the Origin for a while, gaining a deeper understanding of Lord of 10,000 Evils and the ultimate void battlefield. At the same time in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. In the Divine Kingdom world, in the Reincarnation Sacred Palace, Zhou, who was sitting cross-legged on the mat, was deep in thought. I didn't expect Lord of 10,000 Evils to be such a god spirit. I thought he was some heinous Lord of all races reserve army. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Then, he flipped his right hand, and 3 Lord Talent Spheres appeared in his palm. It was the 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent Sphere from the 3 top Master Gods. Let's see how these 3 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talents are. Zhou smiled and took the lead to absorb the Heaven Curse Beast's 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent Sphere. Then, the Chaotic Beast God, the Heaven Curse Beast's 10 Sacred Blessings Lord Talent information appeared in front of him. Chapter 1460, 10 Holy Protection Lord Talent, 1, Editor, Ada's Studios, 10 Sacred Blessings, Chaotic Beast God Heaven Curse Beast's Protection, Specific Talent Effect 1, Heaven Curse Beast Supreme Blessing, the Chaotic Beast God, one of the 10 Chief Gods under the Supreme Will, has performed the supreme blessing on you and your subjects. The physical defense of you and your subjects has greatly increased. Specific Talent Effect 2, Chaos Talent, you and your subjects have the lowest mid-level cultivation talent for any law path, excluding the Lord's Law. Specific Talent Effect 3, Chaos Body, you and your subjects can ignore any physical and soul attacks that are a major level lower than your strength. Specific Talent Effect 4, Chaos Blessing, the beast life forms in your territory have a chance to awaken the Chaos God's race bloodline and become the orthodox descendants of the Chaos God's race. These awakened Chaos God's bloodline descendants will be loyal to you and will never betray you. When these beast life forms who have awakened the Chaos God's race bloodline become God spirits, the Chaos God's race bloodline in their bodies will officially transform into the innate Chaos God's race bloodline and become a true Chaos God's race. Specific Talent Effect 5, Master God's Protection. The development process of your Lord's faction will not be hindered by other Master God level powerhouses. The chaotic beast God, Heaven Curse Beast will secretly protect you and your Lord's faction, stopping or killing any Master God level powerhouses who dare to come and have malicious intentions. Note, for unknown reasons, the effect of this talent is temporarily ineffective. Specific Talent Effect 6, Protector of the Divine Kingdom. When your Lord faction advances to the beginner level Divine Kingdom Lord faction, the chaotic beast God, Heaven Curse Beast will automatically join your Lord faction and become a worship Master God loyal to you. However, you have to promise the other party that you will help the chaotic beast God, Heaven Curse Beast advance to the Supreme God level in the future. Note, for unknown reasons, the effect of this talent is temporarily ineffective. This Lord talent is average, right? Zhou stroked his chin and thought to himself. However, as most of the effects of the Lord talent were prepared for battle, this Lord talent was quite practical. In particular, the third effect of the Lord talent, Chaos Body, gave the subjects under him the ability to ignore the attacks of weak enemies. This effect would be very useful on the battlefield. The third talent effect, Chaos Blessing, was also very interesting. With this talent effect, his territory would gradually give birth to a large number of Chaos God's race subjects under the effects of time. The Chaos God's race was one of the 3 top bloodline races. The addition of such a subject to his subjects would only be beneficial to his future. There wouldn't be any disadvantages. Zhou was quite satisfied with this Lord talent after reading it. Then, he took out and absorbed the King of all Gods, Di Huang's 10 Sacred Blessings Lord talent. Soon, the Lord talent information appeared in front of him one by one. 10 Sacred Blessings, King of all Gods Di Huang's Protection, Specific Talent Effect 1, the Supreme Blessing of the Heavenly Emperor, one of the 10 Chief Gods under the Supreme Will, the King of all Gods, Di Huang, has performed the Supreme Blessing on you and your subjects. You and your subjects have extremely high talent in law skill cultivation. You can begin to comprehend and master law skills when you are at the extraordinary tier level. Specific Talent Effect 2, Boundless Magic Power, the maximum magic power / divine power reserves in your body and the subjects under you have increased by 100%. Specific Talent Effect 3, Law Follows the Heart. You and your subjects, the effect of active abilities such as skill effect / talent effect / law skill effect increases by 100%. Specific Talent Effect 4, Supreme Di Huang, when you and your subjects comprehend laws, there is a 1% chance of comprehending a Lord's law path that suits you. Specific Talent Effect 5, Master God's Protection. The development process of you and your Lord's faction will not be obstructed by other Master God level powerhouses. The first Venerable of the Primordial Dragon will secretly protect you and your Lord's faction and stop or kill all the Master God level powerhouses who dare to come and have ill intentions. Specific Talent Effect 6, Protector of the Divine Kingdom. When your Lord faction advances to the beginner level Divine Kingdom, the Light God Hilu will automatically join your Lord faction and become a worship Master God loyal to you. However, you have to promise him that you will help the Light God Hilu advance to the Supreme God realm in the future. After reading it, Zhou's gaze landed on the Specific Talent Effect 4, Supreme Di Huang. It can actually give subjects a 1% chance of comprehending a Lord's nomological path that suits them when they comprehend laws. Then wouldn't it be easier for my subject to give birth to a connate regal? Zhou was pleasantly surprised. This was a connate regal. There was a chance of becoming a supreme god in the future. With this talent effect, even if the subjects under him did not rely on the Supreme God's Book of the God Spirit, they still had a chance of becoming supreme gods themselves. Coupled with the effect of specific talent effect 1, Supreme Di Huang blessing, my subjects might be able to step onto the path of the Lord's law at the extraordinary tier stage. Coupled with the effect of the supreme blessing, my subjects might be able to step onto the path of the Lord's law at the extraordinary tier stage. Even he had never achieved such an accomplishment. If his subject could do it, he might be the first person in history. If such a thing really happened, Zhou Zhou would naturally not be jealous. There was no need to be jealous. This was because even if the other party had comprehended the Lord's law skill at the extraordinary tier stage and embarked on the path of the Lord's law, he was ultimately his subject. He wouldn't exceed his control, much less become his enemy after he grew up. He would be absolutely dead loyal to him, so he wasn't worried at all. In addition, it was like a child had done more than his parents. Would his parents be jealous? Most parents wouldn't. They would only be proud of having such a child. Then, his gaze landed on the effects of the two Lord talents. The effects of these two Lord talents were not bad. While it was far inferior to the effects of the other two Lord talents, Zhou Zhou was also very satisfied. As for helping Di Huang become a supreme god, Zhou Zhou was not too worried. He was indeed unable to help Di Huang and Origin advance to the supreme god level. Even if they were given two supreme gods Book of the God Spirit, because Origin and Di Huang had already become zombie god spirits, they could not use the Book of the God Spirit, let alone use the Supreme God's inheritance to advance to the Supreme God level. However, just because Zhou Zhou could not do it now did not mean that he could not do it in the future. Zhou Zhou believed that when he became a Supreme God level existence, or even a will level existence, it should be very simple for him to help him become a Supreme God. Therefore, Zhou Zhou was not in a hurry at all. Anyway, there was no time limit for this matter. Then, Zhou Zhou took out and absorbed the last 10 sacred blessings Lord Talent. Chapter 1461, 10 Holy Protection Lord Talent, 2, a text notification appeared. 10 Sacred Blessings Protection of the Original Master God Origin, Specific Talent Effect 1, Supreme Blessing of the Origin, the Original Master God Tier Origin, one of the 10 chief gods under the Supreme Will, has performed the Supreme Blessing on you and your subjects. You and your subjects have a small world in your bodies that you can control freely. Specific Talent Effect 2, God of the World, due to the world in your body, the potential of you and your subjects has increased by a small level, the upper limit is a low-tier deity level advanced grade God Spirit. Specific Talent Effect 3 Origin Favor, due to the world in your body, you and your subjects are favored by the Origin Favor. Your luck is higher than ordinary life forms. Under the protection of the Origin luck, you can often turn calamities into blessings when you encounter danger. It's also easier to obtain treasures and other resources that ordinary life forms can't obtain. When you and your subjects die, the world in your bodies will leave your corpses and become a part of the myriad worlds. You and your subjects won't really die. Instead, you will become the will of the world and live in the inner world. You will live eternally and coexist with the myriad worlds until the myriad worlds are destroyed. Specific Talent Effect 4, Divine Path to Heaven, you and your subjects will not encounter any bottlenecks in advancement before you attain mid-tier deity level elementary grade. The probability of breaking through the bottleneck and successfully advancing will increase by 20% for all levels before Master God Tier Advanced Grade. Specific Talent Effect 5, Master God's Protection, the development process of your Lord's faction will not be obstructed by other Master God level powerhouses. The original Master God Origin will secretly protect you and your Lord's faction and stop or kill any Master God level powerhouses who dare to come and have malicious intentions. Specific Talent Effect 6 Protector of the Divine Kingdom, when your Lord faction advances to the beginner level Divine Kingdom Lord faction, the Origin Lord Origin will automatically join your Lord faction and become a worshipped Master God loyal to you. However, you have to agree to help him advance to the supreme god level in the future. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows slightly after reading it. This 10 sacred blessings Lord talent is not bad. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. Firstly, Origin's supreme blessing could allow the subjects to bring a small world that they could freely control. Small worlds had endless magical uses. Needless to say, those who had read novels that used small worlds as cheats knew the details. Trade, farming, hiding people, small bases, cultivation. All kinds of uses were very useful. The reason why the original spirit race was the number one race in the myriad worlds was also very related to the small worlds in their bodies. As for the specific talent to God of World, it was also because of the small world that his potential automatically increased by a small level. This was all the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, and it did not only include human subjects. Originally, the lowest potential of the human subject was the intermediate grade epic tier. If he wanted to raise it to the potential of an epic tier advanced grade, he needed at least 20 new human master god tiers. They did not need this process to become the lower limit of the potential of an epic tier advanced grade with the enhancement of this Lord talent. Not bad, not bad. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Just this talent effect alone made him very satisfied. Then, he sensed the number of master gods needed to raise the potential of an epic tier advanced grade to the legendary tier elementary grade. In the end, he discovered that he needed a total of 50 new master gods to raise the minimum potential of the human race to the legendary tier elementary grade. 50, it seems that it will take a long time to increase the potential of the human race. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath and thought to himself. However, he was not in a hurry. The original spirit race had spent countless years accumulating so many master gods and raising the original spirit race to the level of a top-notch bloodline race. How little time has passed. He would just take it slow. As for the third talent effect, Origin Favor, it was almost similar to the racial characteristics of the original spirit race. After the original spirit race died, the small world and their bodies would become a part of the myriad worlds. That was because of the original spirit race's contribution to improving the myriad worlds. The original spirit race was favored by the Supreme Will and even personally recognized by the Supreme Will as the number one race in the myriad worlds. Specific talent effect 4, Divine Path to Heaven, also stunned Zhou Zhou. He would not encounter any bottlenecks before advancing to mid-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirits. The probability of breaking through the bottleneck and successfully advancing would increase by 20% before advancing from a mid-tier deity-level elementary grade to a master god tier advanced grade. Be it the former or the latter, they were enough to make countless life forms and even god spirits go crazy. With it there, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was destined to have more and more god spirits, true gods, and even master gods in the future. The Lord talents of the 10 sacred blessings of the 3 races are not bad. Now, I only have the 10 sacred blessings Lord talent of the Master God of Death, Thanatos, left. If I obtain the 10 sacred blessings Lord talent of the Master God tier Thanatos, I will be able to gather all the 10 sacred blessings Lord talent. Zhou Zhou thought. Then, he began to think. The God of Death, Thanatos, was the master god of the Netherworld. Now that the Netherworld was already controlled by the reincarnation will, he could go to the Netherworld when he had time and chat with the reincarnation will. With his relationship with the reincarnation will, it should not be difficult for him to obtain the other party's 10 sacred blessings Lord talent. Zhou Zhou smiled at the thought of this. It seemed that he would soon gather all the 10 sacred blessings Lord talent. He wondered what would happen after he gathered all the Lord talents of the 10 holy protection. At the same time, Zhou Fight finally arrived at the ultimate void battleground with the god spirits. The ultimate void battleground was separated from space, so there was no concept of space here. The battlefield was filled with purple-red scenes, and these scenes were still undergoing strange changes. It looked like he had arrived at a strange hell. Zhou Feit frowned slightly as he looked at the surrounding scene and sensed the changes in his body. His strength had been suppressed and had decreased by at least 50%. Even his Lord's Law was greatly suppressed here. Then, he released the Law skill, King, and forcefully raised his strength to the level of Master God Tier Advanced grade. Only then did he reduce the suppression on him to the lowest level. But even so, he was still suppressed by about 10% of his strength by the environment here. It's because this is not the Supreme Great Cosmos. The laws of the Supreme Great Cosmos are completely inapplicable here. Only existences above the Master God can unleash the power of their nomological path to the greatest extent in this ultimate void battlefield without being affected by an unfamiliar environment because they have already broken through the nomological limit of the Supreme Great Cosmos and walked their own nomological path. Zhou Feit quickly thought of the reason. Chapter 1462, Thousand Evil Lord and Thousand Evil Army. He turned around and looked at the god spirits behind him. When they discovered that the god spirits below true gods were more or less flustered because they could sense that their strength had been greatly affected in this ultimate void battlefield. Almost less than 10% of their strength remained. Only the master gods were barely better and could unleash about 90% of their strength. Zhou took a deep breath. As expected of the ultimate void battleground. It gave them a wake-up call and let them know how powerful the ultimate void battlefield was. He wondered if he could resolve the problem of his strength being suppressed. At this moment, he suddenly sensed something and looked up into the distance. An army of 10 billion god spirits suddenly appeared in the distance. They flew towards Zhou Feit and arrived in front of him in no time. Zhou Feit looked at the other party's sudden appearance. The leader of this faction was a god spirit wearing a black helmet and black armor. He carried a black spear on his back and had a black and red dragon under him. His aura was extremely terrifying. As soon as it appeared, it suppressed all the god spirits present, including the Master God Tier, to the point of being speechless. Even Zhou Feit held his breath slightly. He looked at the other party and could sense the terrifying demonic aura hidden deep in the other party's aura. It was as if there were endless terrifying demons sealed in the other party's body. However, this aura seemed to be suppressed by an extremely powerful sealing law. And because of that, he stood there as if he was the source of evil, as if he was the endpoint of evil. Zhou Feit's mind was calm. The Supreme God Realm. And it was definitely a top supreme god. Moreover, from the looks of it, the other party seemed to have appeared to take him down a notch. This should be Lord of 10,000 evils without a doubt. It seemed that the other party was not as Origin had said. He was not a member of the Lord of all races reserve army who was purely kind and lawful. However, as an opponent for the Lord of all races, his actions were not difficult to understand. His gaze swept past Lord of 10,000 evils and landed on the 1,000 evil army behind him. The 1,000 evil army behind this person numbered as many as 10 billion. Moreover, the most terrifying thing was that this 10 billion army was all god spirits. Zhou Feit looked over and had a rough estimate. Among the 10 billion god spirits in front of him, there were probably more than 100 million true god tier. There were about 10,000 master gods. 10,000 master gods. This was an unimaginable number of master gods by Zhou Feit previously. However, it appeared in front of Zhou Feit. Previously, all the master gods of the three top bloodline races combined with the elite subsidiary bloodline races only had more than 1,000 supremacy gods. However, here, the 1,000 evil army alone had 10 times the number of master gods of the three top bloodline races and elite subsidiary races. Moreover, this was most likely not all of the other party's master god tier. It could be seen how terrifying the other party's strength was. Moreover, this was only the number of master gods. Zhou Feit could feel it. In the other party's army, at least 5 supreme god-level pressures were faintly discernible. The others were all god spirits below the true god tier level. Zhou Fei secretly took a deep breath. Was this Lord of 10,000 Evils and his 1,000 Evils army? Their strength and power were indeed a little exaggerated. If the two sides fought, Zhou Fei was not even sure if his Son of Destiny could successfully use it on the other party. There was a high chance that it could not be used. The other party's strength had already far exceeded them after all. The Son of Destiny could not use it against such an enemy with a huge difference in strength. He looked at the 1,000 Evil army behind him, and his gaze immediately landed on the Supreme Soldier-type Ultimate Evil Spirits. These Ultimate Evil Spirits did not have a physical body. Instead, they were a ball of red fog. There were blood-red incantations around this red fog. Zhou Fei controlled all techniques and could tell at a glance that these incantations were seal-type incantations. These incantations can seal demons and turn the power of the sealed demons into their own. The more demons sealed, the stronger the power they would master, and the more methods they would have. It could be said to be a supreme profession with extremely high growth. The ultimate evil spirit occupied about 1/5 of the army. The remaining 4/5 were all Divine Kingdom soldier types. Even so, this power was enough to shock outsiders. The ultimate evil spirit that has just changed classes should be far inferior to my Supreme God Realm Soldier and Supreme Holy Mage God at the same level. With the ultimate evil spirit that has grown up with a high growth rate, it might be able to fight my Supreme Soldier type, but it's only a fight. The ultimate evil spirit's chances of winning are at most 20%. Zhou Fei assessed in his heart. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. Even though the other party was strong, he was at least stronger than the other party in terms of the strength of his soldier type. When he grew up in the ultimate void battleground, he might be able to fight the other party head-on. At the same time, the Lord of 10,000 Evils was also looking at the new Lord of all Races Reserve in front of him. This was the 4th Lord of all Races Reserve army selected by the Supreme Will. Just the strength of true God tier advance grade. Lord of 10,000 Evils saw through Zhou Fei's strength at a glance. However, he didn't dare underestimate him at all. This was because according to his understanding, the other party did not even have a single cultivation realm before he came to the high continent. He was not even a black iron tier extraordinaire. However, his strength had increased to his current strength at an extremely shocking speed in the extremely short period of time since he came to the high continent. The other party was not even 25 years old. Since ancient times, other than those connate god spirits who were born as god spirits, no postnatal life form's cultivation speed could compare to this Lord of all Races Reserve army. Even he was far inferior to the other party. There was a high chance that it would not happen in the future. Stop. Common people's regal. I've heard of your name for a long time. I can finally meet you today. After a long silence, Lord of 10,000 Evils was the first to speak. He was here to welcome the other party after all. Your Excellency Lord of 10,000 Evils, you're too polite. This Emperor has also heard of your Excellency's name for a long time. It said that if not for your Excellency presiding over the ultimate void battlefield, the great cosmos barrier of the supreme great cosmos would have long been broken by the ultimate void creatures. Our world would have long been invaded by these foreign enemies. All the myriad races in the world remember your contributions. Zhou Fei said with a faint smile. He was completely unaffected by the other party's supreme god-level pressure. The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled faintly and restrained the pressure he emitted. Let's go back to the base first. I'll introduce you to the situation in the ultimate void battleground. The Lord of 10,000 Evils said. Sure. Zhou Fei nodded. Then, everyone flew towards the base under the lead of the 1,000 Evil army. Chapter 1463, Descendants of the God Spirit's Fate. Target. A moment later. The Lord of 10,000 Evils brought Zhou Fight and the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to the base that he had mentioned. It was said to be a base, but it was actually an entire planet. Furthermore, it was a planet that was comparable to tens of thousands of boundless universes. This was the first time Zhou Fight, who had countless bloodline inheritances, had seen such a planet. He could not help but be shocked. He looked at the surface of the planet carefully. On the surface of this planet, there were a large number of racial buildings of different styles. There were also gods from all the races living in these buildings. The weakest of them was a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit, and there were about 1 trillion of them. They were all wearing war uniforms. Trillions of god spirits. This was an extremely terrifying number. Zhou Fight was in disbelief. Was the military strength of the ultimate void battleground that strong? Or did every lord of all races reserve army have so many divine subordinates under them? Compared to this scene, the subordinates of the god spirits he had were too shabby. Wait, Zhou frowned slightly. He sensed a strange aura from these god spirits. The Lord of 10,000 Evils also saw Zhou Fight's expression. He smiled faintly and said, "Did you not expect to see so many god spirits here?" Zhou Fight didn't hide his confusion. He nodded and said in surprise, "I fought with the 3 top bloodline races in the Supreme Great Cosmos before I came here." The racial factions known as the 3 top bloodline races, combined with their elite subsidiary races, only have 2 billion god spirits. The racial factions known as the 3 top bloodline races, combined with their elite subsidiary races, only have 2 billion god spirits. Is there actually such a huge difference in strength between you reserve armies of the Lord of all races and those top bloodline factions? Also, I feel that most of the auras of the gods on this planet don't seem right. Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded and slowly explained, "We'll have to talk about it slowly. The planet you're looking at is the main base of our 1,000 Evil army in the ultimate void battlefield. I call it the Demon Lord planet. We have about 132 base planets like this in the ultimate void battlefield, occupying 15% of the territory of the ultimate void battlefield. Other than being able to carry our soldiers and service members, these base planets also have the ability to control and monitor a place. He is equivalent to a territory token. It's the cornerstone of a territory, and it's also proof of the territory that opened up the ultimate void battlefield." At this point, the Lord of 10,000 Evils suddenly changed the topic and brought up the main point. "As for the god spirits you see in front of you, most of them are actually not god spirits." "Not god spirits?" Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows. "Emichim." The Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded. "That is because the level of the battlefield in the ultimate void battlefield is very high, only god spirits can survive and fight on this battlefield. It's almost impossible for non-god spirits to live here. However, our divine soldiers' daily lives and war logistics always need some other members to manage and maintain. The god spirit soldiers don't have the time and energy to do such a thing. We can only leave it to the other members. However, the Supreme Will can't bring us non-god spirits living beings from the Supreme Great Cosmos. In the end, we thought for a long time and could only use a more extreme method. That is to let the god spirits give birth to descendants on the ultimate void battlefield. Then, they can use a special mystic technique to transform the descendant of the god spirit itself, allowing their essence existence to adapt to the environment here, allowing them to survive on this battlefield even if they are not god spirits. This way, these descendants of the god spirit can survive in the ultimate void battlefield. You're saying that these seemingly god spirits are actually the descendants of the god spirits here, disguised as god spirits through special secret techniques? Zhou Fight said in surprise. That's how they deceived the ultimate void battlefield and allowed them to survive here successfully. I can't say that I was deceived. It's just a way to adapt to and use environmental rules. The Lord of 10,000 Evils said calmly. Transform the physique of the descendants of the God Spirit and let it adapt to the environment of the ultimate void battlefield? Zhou Feit was deep in thought. Then, he suddenly thought of something and raised his eyebrows slightly. Then wouldn't they be unable to leave the ultimate void battlefield for the rest of their lives? This was like a problem of acclimatization. Since he had chosen to adapt to the environment of the ultimate void battlefield, he was destined to not be able to adapt to the environment of the supreme great cosmos. The two were completely different. If he wanted to forcefully leave the ultimate void battlefield and return to the supreme great cosmos, there was only one outcome: death. It was just like how Earthlings would suffocate when they entered space. That's not all. The Lord of 10,000 Evils said, if we can completely defeat the ultimate void creature one day, this ultimate void battlefield will collapse. At that time, the demis who are already considered life forms of the ultimate void battlefield will also die with the collapse of the ultimate void battlefield. It's inevitable. Fortunately, it's still too early to talk about this. Ultimate void creatures can't be eliminated in a short period of time. These descendants of the God Spirit can also live for a while longer. Zhou Feit did not comment. He didn't have any thoughts of criticizing their actions of modifying the descendant of the God Spirit. With so many God Spirits gathered on this battlefield, it was almost inevitable that a descendant would be bombed. With the method to modify the descendant of the God Spirit, at least it could allow the descendant of the God Spirit to survive on this battlefield that only had God Spirits. However, without this method, the descendant of the God Spirit would die as soon as it was born. Looking at it this way, he might as well modify these descendants of the God Spirit. At the very least, they could survive. As for the price of surviving, that was something that could not be helped. By the way, since you've come to the ultimate void battleground, the Supreme Will should have set some training targets for you, right? What's the target? Can you tell me? If it's not convenient for you to say, forget it. The Lord of 10,000 Evils asked with a faint smile. It's not inconvenient. Zhou Feit said, the Supreme Will only has one goal for me, and that is to completely end this war between the two universes and the ultimate void creatures. This goal was personally told to him by the Supreme Will before he came. This goal was personally told to he by the Supreme Will before he came. He looked at Zhou Feit in a daze with a blank expression. Suddenly, he smacked his lips and patted Zhou Feit's shoulder. Brother. I'm the third in the Lord of all Races Reserve Army. You don't mind saying that I'm your brother, right? The Lord of 10,000 Evils' attitude suddenly changed. There was a faint trace of pity in her tone. The corners of Zhou Feit's mouth twitched twice as he nodded. He could tell that this fellow was not a bad person. They could talk about it. Brother Demon, do you have anything to say? Brother Common People's Regal, do you know how many years I've been here? The Lord of 10,000 Evils asked a baffling question first. Chapter 1464, War Summary. Editor. Atlas Studios, according to my understanding, Brother Devil seems to have stayed here for more than 120 million years. Zhou Feit had the inheritance of the various races in his mind and had some understanding of this matter. That's right. I've been here for more than 120 million years. The Lord of 10,000 Evils' voice was low. In the past 120 million years, I've thought of all kinds of ways and experienced all kinds of setbacks and dangers, but I still couldn't repel those ultimate void creatures, let alone completely end this war. You've seen my power. The Lord of 10,000 Evils pointed at the 1,000 Evil army behind him. 10 billion God spirits. 100 million true God tiers. 10,000 master God tiers. I even have several supreme gods under me. However, I'm still unable to completely fight against those ultimate void creatures even with such a force. Even now, I've only occupied 15% of the entire void battleground. Do you think you can do better than me? The Lord of 10,000 Evils' expression darkened. Back then, he was sent here by the Supreme Will because he hoped that he could resolve the threat of the ultimate void creature. Then, he might be able to become the Lord of all races. However, so many years had passed. Not only did he not expel those ultimate void creatures, even the ultimate void battlefield personally established by the Supreme Will was occupied by more than 90% of the territory by those ultimate void creatures. As a result, they, who should have been fighting on their home ground, had now become an away game. This was not just a matter of losing face. More importantly, he had lost the opportunity to show the Supreme Will that he had the ability to become the Lord of all races. Now, in the eyes of the Supreme Will, he was just a failure who couldn't fulfill his expectations. He still seemed to have the status of a reserve army of the Lord of all races. However, he was already getting further and further away from the position of the Supreme Lord. It could be seen that the Lord of all races had ignored he for so many years. And this time, they sent a fourth Lord of all races reserve army to him, which proved that the Supreme Will had completely lost patience with him. That was why they sent this common people's regal to replace him. The Lord of 10,000 Evils glanced at Zhou without leaving a trace at the thought of this. If he ended the war with the ultimate void creatures before this common people's regal, would he be able to recover his status in the Supreme Will's heart and even have a chance of getting the Supreme Lord position again? This thought flashed through his mind. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. If he could do it, he would have done it long ago. Why would he wait until today? Still, if he couldn't do it, it would be even harder for him to become the common people's regal. As long as he did better than him, his status in the hearts of the Supreme Will might increase a little. The Lord of 10,000 Evils thought of this idea. Instantly, he felt motivated. Zhou smiled faintly when he heard that the other party was questioning his strength. There are some things that it's useless to just say. You have to do it to prove it. When Lord of 10,000 Evils heard this, an obvious look of surprise appeared on his face. No way. The other party couldn't even see the situation clearly. He still wanted to struggle. Did this fellow really think that he, a fledgling Supreme Lord Reserve Army, could deal with the ultimate void creature that he had spent countless years to deal with? If it was really so easy to resolve, they would not have become one of the greatest problems of the Supreme Will. However, he didn't say anything mocking even though he looked down on him. He only smiled faintly and said, "Brother, you're bold. You just arrived. I've prepared a welcome banquet for you. Why don't we welcome you first? It just so happens that at the banquet, he'll tell you about this ultimate void battlefield and the ultimate void creature." When Zhou first heard that it was just eating and drinking, he wanted to reject it. He had just arrived at the ultimate void battlefield and was feeling smug. Why would he waste time on such favors? However, he changed his mind after hearing the last sentence. "I'd like that. Thank you, Brother Demon Master," Zhou said with a faint smile. "Hey, this is nothing." Lord of 10,000 Evils waved his hand and pulled Zhou into the base planet to start the welcoming banquet. At the same time, Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, in the Reincarnation Sacred Palace, Zhou was looking at today's battle summary. After the battle with the three races today, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had wiped out a total of more than 200 capital units troops, 800 million Chaos Gods race and their elite subsidiary race God Spirits, 100,000 true God tiers, and more than 300 Master Gods. After today's territory expansion war, the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had obtained a total of 800,000 mist cores, origin crystals, skill books, equipment, and basic materials of various levels in the capital units. There were also 93,287,312,317,698 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 778,789 legendary tier and below Lord Talent spheres. A large number of Lord Talent crystal fragments of other levels. There were also 30 capital units, 7,838,342,300,000 million units of divine crystals from low-tier deity level to high-tier deity level. 12,048,739,898 true God-tier divine crystals. 2,334,927,678 Master God-tier divine crystals. 874,398 Grade 1 to Grade 3 Supreme God divine crystals. 87,433,298,790,000 million low-level to high-tier deity-level divine artifacts. 78.99 million true God-tier divine artifacts. 10,893 Master God-tier divine artifacts. 127 Supreme God divine artifacts. There were a total of about 60. 1 trillion divine spark fragments, God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 2,387,988,732 Master God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 3,998 Supreme God-level God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. In terms of insight defection, the three races were all equipped with supreme treasures to prevent insight defection. There were no gains in terms of insight defection. However, after this battle, the original Spirit Race's army and the Mu God Race's army had all become slave soldiers of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. This effect was not inferior to the Sun of Destinies. It was even better. Currently, the number of troops was at least 600 capital units army, 1 billion God spirits, 100,000 true God tiers, and more than 300 supremacy gods. The exact number was still being calculated. Moreover, this portion of troops was still being reorganized in the Chaos Sea. It would take a while for them to be sent to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. In addition, in terms of the advancement of God spirits, a total of 121,238,789 legendary tier advanced grade soldiers had advanced to low-tier deity level elementary grade God spirits. There were also 8,678 high-tier deity level advanced grade God spirits who had advanced to true God tier elementary grade God spirits. Another 16 top-notch true gods of the human race and 20 top-notch true gods of the people of foreign races felt their master god tier bottleneck and applied to enter the reincarnation sacred palace to cultivate in seclusion to try to break through to the master god tier realm. There was a high chance that they would officially break through tomorrow. Zhou Zhou's original military strength was 210 capital units 2,641,241, 173, 818, 321 soldiers, 240,384,609 god spirits, 33,729 true god tiers, and 129 supremacy gods. Now, with these insight defection troops and new God spirit powerhouses, the troops under him reached 146 capital units with 264,117,457,818,321 soldiers, 239,618,609 God spirits, 33,064 true gods, and 116 master gods. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly after reading it. After today's war, even though the total number of his troops did not change much, excluding the original spirit race and the shepherd's god race, the overall strength of the soldiers had increased greatly. Especially in terms of the god spirits, there were more than 100 million ordinary god spirits, nearly 10,000 new true god tiers, as many as 36 new master gods that were about to be born. This was already an extremely shocking improvement. Chapter 1465, Base Star Core. Not bad, not bad. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Then, he closed the battle report and continued to enter the reincarnation sacred palace to cultivate. His clones were all taking risks outside. He had to work hard even if he didn't take risks. At the same time, in the ultimate void battlefield. In the base of the Demon Lord planet, at the banquet. The god spirits of the blazing sun divine kingdom were drinking with the god spirits of the thousand evil army. It was very lively. This Demon Lord was extremely generous. The best wine and delicacies at the banquet were at least at the true god tier level, and the best even included supreme god level wine and delicacies. Zhou Feit did not stand on ceremony. He and Lord of 10,000 Evils ate and drank casually, as if they were not moved by the scene in front of them. Indeed, they did not have much of a reaction. He had nearly 4,000 supreme god-level treasures in his first treasure vault, including many supreme god-level delicacies after the battle today. In the future, he would definitely have more and more of such things, so he naturally wouldn't make a fuss over the scene in front of him. Brother, let me tell you about this ultimate void battlefield. The Lord of 10,000 Evils drank the supreme god-level wine in his hand and was already a little drunk. He said in a low voice, originally, this ultimate void battlefield was personally created by the supreme will to resist the invasion of the ultimate void creatures. However, this battlefield is outside the supreme great cosmos after all. Behind this group of ultimate void creatures is the protection of that void emperor, even with the support of the supreme power of the supreme will. Therefore, not only do we not have any advantage on this battlefield that belongs to us, we are even at a disadvantage. Later on, as the ultimate void creatures gradually devoured our battlefield, our disadvantage became greater and greater. At this point, 14 of the 15 of the territory of our entire ultimate void battlefield has been occupied by ultimate void creatures. Only our last battlefield territory, which is the radiation range of our Demon Lord's base planet, is still firmly guarded by us. However, it would be just barely enough. If there are no variables in the future, there's a high chance that this place will be breached. However, the Supreme will want to sit back and do nothing. Look, he sent you here. Brother. The Lord of 10,000 Evils looked at Zhou Feit. He said heartfelt words, perhaps because it was easy to get drunk with good wine. I don't know why the Supreme will thinks that you can resolve the crisis here, or why he thinks that you can help me delay the invasion of the ultimate void battlefield, but I advise you to be prepared for the situation here. Thank you, Brother Demon Lord. Zhou Feit looked at Lord of 10,000 Evils and nodded seriously. Even though this Lord of 10,000 Evils had some hostility towards him from being competitors, this hostility should be purely the competitiveness and did not have any ill intentions towards him. It was difficult for Zhou Feit to dislike such a person. Brother Demon Lord. If I really resolve the crisis of this ultimate void battlefield one day and even completely end the war with the ultimate void creatures, how about you work under me, Tathagata? Zhou Feit said half-jokingly. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned for a moment before he laughed loudly and said, if you can really do such a thing, I'm afraid it won't be difficult for you to obtain the position of the Supreme Lord. Even though it's not very honorable for me to become a subordinate of the Supreme Lord, it's a good home. So what if I promise you? His tone was casual. It was obvious that he felt that Zhou Feit was bragging. Towards this, Zhou Feit only smiled and did not say anything else. Even though he had yet to come into contact with the ultimate void creature, he had only one goal for coming here, to complete the mission of the Supreme Will. Apart from that, he had no other path to take. That was why he said such boastful words, because he had nowhere to go. He could only win and not lose. Brother. As the reserve army of the new Supreme Lord, it's not convenient for you to garrison here. Therefore, you can go to the Supreme God Realm Monument later to exchange for a base star core. Then, you can go outside the jurisdiction of the Demon Lord's base planet and establish a battlefield territory that belongs to you. Then, you can use this as a foundation to expand to the surrounding battlefield. When you can occupy the entire Ultimate Void battlefield, our mission will be completed. But you have to note that the battlefields outside the planetary jurisdiction of the Demon Lord's base are all treated as their territory by those Ultimate Void creatures. If you bring the base star core to open a base in the wilderness, you will definitely be surrounded by those Ultimate Void creatures. You have to be careful. The Lord of 10,000 Evils didn't say anything about reinforcements. His troops still needed to defend their battlefield territory after all. He didn't have the strength to send out troops to fight. If he had just sent out the god spirits and the enemy attacked, he would have nothing left. Therefore, he could only let Zhou Fight rely on himself to establish his own territory. Furthermore, as the Supreme Lord Reserve Army sent by the Supreme Will to save this place, if Zhou Fight could not even do the most basic thing like establishing a foothold, then he had no right to stay here. It was better to quit early so that the Supreme Will wouldn't be troubled. Sure. Thank you for your reminder, Brother Demon Lord. Zhou Fight said with a faint smile. The Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded. Then, the two god spirits enjoyed themselves. After a final conversation, Zhou Fight walked out of the banquet and went straight to a divine object that he had been looking forward to for a long time. Supreme God Realm Monument. Zhou Fight looked at the sky-penetrating divine monument in front of him with a look of surprise. The pressure of this divine item far exceeded that of a supreme god treasure. No god spirit would have been able to approach it if not for the fact that it was restraining its pressure. It's definitely a will-level divine item. Zhou Fight thought to himself. Then, his consciousness entered and quickly discovered all kinds of treasures, cultivation techniques, divine medicines, divine ores, blueprints, divine artifacts, racial divine artifacts, god spirit inheritances. From low-tier deity level elementary grade to 4th order supreme god, it could be said that there was everything. That's nice. Zhou Fight muttered to himself. He continued searching. He soon had found what he wanted. Base Star Core, Grade 4 Supreme God level treasure, the core of the territory of the Ultimate Void battlefield. After planting it in the territory of the ownerless Ultimate Void battlefield, it can occupy the battlefield territory with a diameter of 10 trillion light-years, Grade 4 Supreme God level territory. Required military merits, 10 million military merits, 1 Supreme God mission medal. Zhou Fight looked down and realized that there were other low-level base cores. The lowest was a Grade 1 Supreme God base core that could occupy a battlefield territory with a diameter of 50 million light-years. It only required 2 million military merits and 1 Supreme God mission medal. Looks like I have to complete the mission first and obtain military merits and Supreme God level mission medals. At this thought, Zhou Fight opened the mission list. Chapter 1466, Mythical Tier, The Only Lord Talent, Ultimate Void. True God Tier Advance Grade. Zhou Fight glanced at the missions on the mission list. There were all kinds of missions on it, but they were all about missions on the battlefield. For example, suppressing and occupying a Grade 2 Supreme God regional territory, Hummel City. The reward was 3 million military merits and 1 Supreme God mission medal. Repairing the Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Artifact of the Mysterious Underworld Supreme God, the Mysterious Underworld Ho. Reward, 500,000 military merits and 2 Master God level mission medals. Provide 100,000 units of Divine Power supplementary materials from low-level to high-tier deity level. Reward, 50,000 military merits and a Master God tier medal. There were all kinds of missions. Zhou Fight scrutinized it for a long time before his gaze finally landed on a mission. Conquer the Grade 1 Supreme God level war territory, Kai's City. Grade 1 Supreme God level mission. Conquer Kai's City and eliminate the Void General, Kai's, Grade 1 Supreme God, and be rewarded with 2 million military merit points and a Supreme God level mission medal. Grade 1 Supreme God mission. The strongest opponent I'm facing is probably this Void General, Kai's, who is also a Grade 1 Supreme God. It's also very close to the planet where the Demon Lord's base is. It's not very difficult. I can try it out. In passing, I can also test the newly obtained Supreme Unique Lord talent, Son of Destiny. Perhaps I can induce Insight Defection to become this Grade 1 Supreme God. Zhou Feit thought to himself. It did not matter even if the Insight Defection did not arrive. With his current strength, coupled with those Supreme Divine Artifacts and Supreme God-level treasures, he still had some confidence in dealing with a Grade 1 Supreme God as long as he did not deal with those top Supreme Gods. At the thought of this, Zhou Feit no longer hesitated and immediately accepted this mission. Then, he immediately led the army out of the banquet and headed for a void teleportation array on the Demon Lord planet base. This void teleportation array could teleport he and his army to a place about 1 trillion light-years away from Kai's city. As for the rest of the way, Zhou Feit could only rely on himself. 1 trillion light-years. If I can teleport through the dark universe, I can reach my destination in less than an hour. However, in the ultimate void battlefield where the laws of this supreme great cosmos are greatly suppressed, the eternal mothership can't enter the dark universe at all, let alone teleport. We can only fly over this trip of 1 trillion light-years. It'll probably take about a day. Zhou Feit shook his head. In the ultimate void battleground, it was really inconvenient everywhere. Then, he did not waste any more time and piloted the Eternal Mothership and the other Master God-tier advanced grade battleships and flew towards Kai's city at full speed. The Lord of 10,000 Evils also received the news at the same time that Zhou Feit accepted this mission. As the highest administrator of the Supreme Will faction in the ultimate void battlefield, he naturally had this authority. This brother of mine actually accepted a Supreme God-level mission as soon as he came. I remember that there are no Supreme God-level experts in his faction, right? The Lord of 10,000 Evils looked puzzled. Then, he thought to himself, he doesn't look like a rash and ignorant person. Since he dares to accept a mission of this level, it means that he has a certain level of confidence. Forget it, he frowned and waved his hand. He saw an ultimate evil spirit emitting the aura of a Grade 1 Supreme God come to his side. Master, what can I do for you? He asked coldly. From now on, pay attention to the information from Kai's city at all times. At the same time, get the 1,000 Evil Army to prepare for battle and be prepared to receive the Supreme Lord, the 4th Reserve Army, who is heading to Kai's city to suppress us. Yes, Your Majesty. The ultimate evil spirit nodded, and then a puzzled expression appeared on its cold and stiff face. Your Majesty, isn't that Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army your competitor? Since the other party has taken such a risky action, let's just watch them die. Why do we have to go the extra mile to save him? He is the Supreme Lord's Reserve Army that the Supreme will personally send here, and am the leader of the ultimate void battlefield. Something happened to him as soon as he arrived. Even if it has nothing to do with me, it will definitely affect me. It will definitely affect my impression in the Supreme Will's heart. In the period when he first came, it'll help he a few times. But as time passes and he becomes completely familiar with the situation in the ultimate void battlefield, I won't help him anymore. When the time comes, whatever happens to he will have nothing to do with me. When the time comes, he will know everything he needs to know after all. If we encounter danger again, it can only prove that the other party is weak and stupid. It has nothing to do with me. The Lord of 10,000 Evils shook his head. Your Majesty is wise. I'll go now. This Grade 1 Supreme God Ultimate Evil Spirit came to a realization when he heard this. Then, he went to carry out his orders. When the Lord of 10,000 Evils saw this, he only silently watched the other party leave. Many strange emotions flashed across his eyes. There was anticipation, nervousness, uneasiness, relief, but in the end, they all turned into a sigh. Time passed quickly. It was the next day in the blink of an eye. In the blazing sun divine capital, in the reincarnation sacred palace, Zhou Zhou slowly opened his eyes. A smile appeared on his face as he sensed his strength and realm. Perfected the true God tier advance grade. I can advance to the low-level master God tier elementary grade as long as I break through the bottleneck. One can advance to the low-level master God tier elementary grade tomorrow. Zhou Zhou muttered with a smile. It was the bottleneck for advancing to the master God tier after all. Especially when it was the bottleneck of advancing to the Lord Law Master God. It was still a little difficult. He still needed some time to break through the bottleneck and complete the advancement even if his aptitude was already considered world-shaking. Then, he stopped thinking and used half of the origin in his body to create his 10th clone. Soon, Zhou 10 was created. Greetings, main body. Zhou 10, who had just been born, cupped his fists at Zhou Zhou calmly. From today onwards, your name will be Zhou 10. You will do the same as me, comprehending the Lord's laws in the reincarnation sacred palace. Zhou Zhou made arrangements for Zhou 10's future. Alright, main body. Zhou 10 nodded. Zhou Zhou was both satisfied and surprised. This 10th clone of his was sufficiently obedient. However, it was good to be obedient. It saved him the trouble of thinking about how difficult it was for his avatar to come up with a name. He got Zhou 10 to stay here to cultivate. Then, with a thought, he opened the Lord Talent interface and saw the end. A brand new mythical tier Lord Talent appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. He took a look and was pleasantly surprised. It's actually this Lord Talent. As expected of the Supreme Sacred Body. The awakening is what I need. Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. He looked at this Lord Talent. A notification appeared. Lord Talent, Ultimate Void, Mythical Tier, Unique, Specific Talent Effect, you have obtained the inheritance of the Ultimate Void Law, Advanced Grade Master God Tier. You can comprehend the Ultimate Void Law and be like a fish in water in the Ultimate Void. Chapter 1467, 10th Clone, Zhou 10. Zhou Zhou looked at this Lord Talent and the corners of his 11 lips curled up. Zhou Fight and the God spirits under him were in an alternate world independent of the Supreme Great Cosmos in the Ultimate Void battlefield. Their laws could be said to be restricted everywhere. And with the Ultimate Void Law inheritance bestowed by the Ultimate Void Lord Talent, as long as he 11 comprehended and grasped it, Zhou Fight would definitely be able to master the Ultimate Void power and escape the negative effects of the Ultimate Void battlefield. He could even get the Ultimate Void battlefield to help him complete the mission given to 11 him by the Supreme Will. Thinking of this, Zhou Zhou immediately woke up Zhou 10, who had just entered a meditative state. Zhou 10, from today onwards, you don't have to comprehend the Lord's law for the time being. Study the Ultimate Void Law first and strive to master the Ultimate Void Law to the Master God tier level as soon as possible. 11. Only the mastery of the Ultimate Void Laws at this level can be useful to Zhou Fight and the others. Alright, main body, Zhou 10 expressed that there was no problem. His personality was that of a tool, so he did not resist Zhou Zhou's arrangements at all. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly when he saw this. Then, he walked out of the reincarnation sacred palace and arrived in Mugu's world. At this moment, Mugu was drinking tea in the pavilion. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he sat down impolitely and drank tea and discussed the Tao with him. A moment later, a golden stream of light flew out of the Scarlet Broodmother and landed in front of Zhou Zhou. It was Wu Xian. The Legion Commander of the Homeland Defense Army, Wu Xian, greets His Majesty. Wu Xian immediately said respectfully when he saw Zhou Zhou. Then, he immediately took out 3 world rings and handed them to Zhou Zhou. Your Majesty, this is today's spoils of war. Zhou Zhou nodded and took it. Then, he entered it with his divine consciousness. One of the world rings contained a large number of iron-eating bear pet eggs, tree core gems, and other loots. Among other two world rings, one of them contained the 32 Capital Units 1 Supreme God Realm Soldier Recruitment Books, and the 32 Capital Units Supreme Holy Mage God Recruitment Books. The other world ring contained the 32 Capital Units 1 Supreme God Realm Soldier Class Change Certificate, and the 32 Capital Units Supreme Holy Mage God Class Change Certificate. Seeing this, Zhou handed the world ring containing the class change certificate to Wu Xian. Legion Commander Wu Xian, give these class change certificates to Feng Luo and let him gradually change the remaining soldier types of the main army into these two supreme soldier types. After the main combat army under our command and the soldiers of your Homeland Defense Army have all changed to Supreme God Realm Soldiers and Supreme Holy Mage Gods, we will leave another 500 Capital Units class change certificates as backup. Then, we will begin to use the newly produced class change certificates on the reserve recruits. The current him wouldn't be afraid of any enemy. Yes, Your Majesty. I'll hand it over to Legion Commander Feng Luo now. Wu Xian said solemnly. Then, he immediately went to do his work. Seeing this, Zhou took the remaining recruitment books to the Gate of Summoning and summoned a Master God Tier Advanced Grade Eternal Battleship. This Master God Tier Advanced Grade Eternal Battleship was one of the subtypes of the Eternal Mothership. It was specialized in cross-border wars, multiverse wars, and could even carry out inter-universe wars. It was a top-notch battleship specialized in offense developed by the Machina Master God, Zero. There were only 103 top-notch battleships of this level in the entire Machina race. After Machina Master God Zero completely submitted to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, Zero directly took out 80 of the advanced grade Master God battleships and personally sent them to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom for the army to use. Seeing this, Zhou was naturally very satisfied with Zero's selfless contribution, $0. He directly gave him a Grade 2 Supreme God's Book of the God Spirit. Hence, the Machina Master God became the first Master God among the 10 Master Gods to obtain the Supreme God's inheritance. When the War Master God and the other top Master Gods saw that the Machina Master God had actually obtained the inheritance of the Supreme God's Book of the God Spirit from Zhou, they were immediately excited. They all wanted to ask Zhou for the Supreme God's inheritance that belonged to them. But Zhou did not give it to them. How precious was the inheritance of the Supreme God! Even Zhou had only obtained 100 to 200 portions. The War Master God and the others were indeed qualified to obtain a Supreme God's inheritance, but there was no time limit. They had just joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and had yet to make a great contribution. They could not be considered to have followed their old minister. Under such circumstances, Zhou did not want to give them the inheritance of the Supreme God for the time being. At the very least, they had to show enough value before Zhou would give them the Book of the God Spirit, the Supreme God. For example, Zero had directly sent 80 Master God Tier Advanced Grade battleships. Even though the combined value of these 80 Master God Tier Advanced Grade space battleships might not even be comparable to a Supreme God's Book of the God Spirit, these were given with good intentions, and Zhou was currently in need of cosmic warships of this level. That was why he had given the Machina Master God and Supreme God the Book of the God Spirit. The War Master God and the others were not stupid. They quickly knew that they had not made any great contributions at the moment and were not worthy of being bestowed with the Supreme God's inheritance. Therefore, they were all holding back and wanted to make contributions. It was fine if they did not know that Zhou had the Supreme God's inheritance in the past. Now that they knew, they had to give it their all. Speaking of which, after Zhou summoned an eternal battleship, he spent 100 intermediate true God tier divine crystals to summon the extraordinary tier advanced grade army of the 64 capital units and placed them all on the eternal battleship. After a few simple words, Zhou asked Zero to send these recruits to Feng Luo to join the main combat army. Then, he opened the original Dragon Abyss interface and spent 100 intermediate true God-tier divine crystals to summon 66,666,660 pure, blooded dragons. He also placed them in the Eternal Mothership. Then, he carefully observed these dragons and regrettably discovered that there were no legendary dragons among these pure-blooded dragons. Zhou could not help but feel a little regretful, but he did not pay much attention to it. Then, he spent another 100 true God-tier intermediate-grade divine crystals to recruit today's new subjects. In the end, he realized that he had recruited more than 510 million new subjects today. He had summoned more than 80 million new subjects than usual, including the 13 true God-tier intermediate-grade God spirits. Moreover, because of the Lord talent, heavenly summoning, most of the 470 million new subjects were extraordinary tier advanced grade non-professionals. The remaining subjects were professionals whose strength exceeded that of the extraordinary tier advanced grade. Zhou smacked his lips. It seemed that having extraordinary tier power without a profession was not a bug. That was good. They would all be arranged to enter the Homeland Defense Army first before giving out RHE Profession Class Change Certificate and letting them change their professions to professionals first. At this moment. Boom, 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 boom. A total of 36 pillars of light soared into the sky from the direction of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. Zhou smiled when he saw this. Another true god had advanced to the Master God tier realm. Furthermore, there were a total of 36 new Master Gods. Chapter 1468, Reward. The phenomena of the advancement of 36 Master Gods shocked the myriad worlds. Countless God spirits immediately looked at the source of the advancement phenomenon. When they saw that the phenomena of the advancement of the 36 Master Gods came from the blazing sun divine kingdom, most of their attitudes were shocked and matter-of-fact. Today, 36 true gods actually advanced to the Master God tier level at the same time. Oh, it's the blazing sun divine kingdom. Then it's fine. The advancement of 36 true gods at the same time has really refreshed my worldview. It's ridiculous. As expected of the Supreme Lord Reserve Army. There are 36 new Master Gods right from the start. Even the 3 top bloodline races of the past can't do such a grand advancement, what more us? What 3 top bloodline races? Now that the 3 top bloodline races have already declined, unless new existences like Origin and Di Huang can pop up again. Your Excellency Common People's Regal, when are you going to lead the humans under you to become the only top bloodline race faction? The god spirits of the myriad worlds were discussing. Some god spirits even congratulated Zhou through the Lord channel or the battle channel of the myriad races. Zhou did not respond. A moment later. 36 streams of light soared into the sky from the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and landed in front of Zhou. Among them were 16 new Master Gods of the human race. There were also 20 new Master Gods of the people of foreign races. At this moment, they were half kneeling in front of Zhou and saying respectfully and gratefully, "Greetings, Your Majesty. Thank you for the inheritance, Your Majesty. Otherwise, we wouldn't have our current achievements. Your efforts are also an indispensable reason for you to advance to the Master God tier even though the Master God tier inheritance is important. Get up." Zhou said. "Tonight, this Emperor will hold a new Master God banquet for you guys to celebrate your advancement to Master God tier." Zhou smiled. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The 36 new Master Gods said respectfully in unison. Zhou smiled and nodded. Then, he waved his right hand, and a total of 36 world rings appeared in front of every new Master God. Among these 36 world rings, every world ring has a set of Master God tier elementary grade divine artifacts that are suitable for you. The rules are the same. Make good use of the main divine artifact this Emperor gave you. Perform well in the army in the future. If you perform outstandingly, this emperor can give you even higher level supreme god inheritance. Zhou said solemnly. He already had a lot of supreme god inheritances in his hands. It was time to use them to excite his subordinates. Supreme god inheritance. When the 36 new master gods and the surrounding master gods of the blazing sun divine kingdom heard this, disbelief immediately appeared in their eyes, and their breathing quickened. They naturally believed that what His Majesty said was true. His Majesty had only surpassed himself in terms of remuneration and never given him insufficient amounts. Since His Majesty said that there was the inheritance of the Supreme God, there definitely would be. Moreover, there might be a Supreme God inheritance that was specially suitable for them. Their eyes burned at the thought of this. Their eyes burned. That was the inheritance of the Supreme God. Even top master gods like the 10 master gods dreamed of obtaining the inheritance. They were even willing to sell their bodies for it. It could be seen how precious such an inheritance was. His Majesty was actually willing to give it to him. Long live His Majesty. We will definitely perform well and not let His Majesty down. The new master gods shouted. Your Majesty, if we perform well, can we also compete for the inheritance of the Supreme God? Among the surrounding god spirits, one of them said impatiently. The other master gods also had expectant expressions. Among them, War Master God Terence and the other 10 master gods had the most expectant and eager expressions. Sure. As long as you make a great contribution, every god spirit is qualified to obtain the Supreme God inheritance in this emperor's hands. Let me say this in advance. I don't have many Supreme God inheritances in my hands. First come, first served. I won't wait for you if you're late. Zhou smiled. The god spirits cheered when they heard this, their eyes filled with ambition. Zhou smiled when he saw this. Then, he sensed the lower limit of the human race's potential. If the human race wanted to raise the lower limit of their potential from an epic tier advanced grade to a legendary tier elementary grade, they needed a total of 50 new master gods. Now that there were 16 new human master gods, he only needed to add 34 new human master gods in the future to raise the minimum potential of the human race to the legendary tier elementary grade. Zhou nodded inwardly. 34 new master god tiers of the human race were naturally not difficult for the current him. Perhaps in 3 to 4 days, he would be able to gather these new master god tiers and raise the lower limit of human potential. Then, he got these new master god tiers to look for Feng Luo and arrange their future posts. He came to Zhou Qingmin as for him. In the end, there was still nothing that attracted him today. He couldn't help but be disappointed. Your Majesty, you can also wait a few years. This way, I can also accumulate some goods. Perhaps some goods that Your Majesty likes can appear. Zhou Qingmin couldn't help but suggest. Forget it. I don't have anything to do usually. I'll just treat it as a stroll. Zhou waved his hand and rejected his suggestion. He quite liked the feeling of opening a mystery box every day. Although there was a high chance that he wouldn't be able to open any good products, he would just treat it as enjoying the process of opening a mystery box. When I increase the Supreme Sacred Body to the Supreme God level, I must increase this Lord's shop too. Zhou thought to himself. Then, he bought all the goods. He instructed Zhou Marshal to lead the army to the Chaos Sea to collect Chaos Divine treasures as he returned to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. Now that Zhou Fight was not around, he could only let Zhou Marshal and Feng Luo lead the army to collect the Chaos Divine treasures for the time being. Zhou Marshal immediately accepted the order and went forward. At the Chaos Sea, when Zhou Marshal led the army to the Chaos Sea, with the help of Bodhi Supreme, they quickly saw the Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon and the other 10 Chaotic Divine Demons he had brought. Greetings, Your Majesty. The Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon immediately said respectfully when he saw Zhou Marshal. You're quite a stickler, you really brought the 10 chaotic divine demons. Zhou Marshall said in surprise when he saw the 10 chaotic divine demons with different nomological auras behind the spacetime chaotic divine demon. Just losing a chaos divine treasure can be exchanged for 4 Master God tier divine artifacts. Not every chaotic divine demon has the courage to reject such a profitable deal. The spacetime chaotic divine demon smiled. Zhou Marshall nodded. This spacetime chaotic divine demon was really a talent and could be nurtured. Their eyes burned at the thought of this. Zhou Marshall waved his right hand and saw a divine medicine appear in his hand. He threw it in front of the chaotic divine demon. This is a grade 1 supreme god-level treasure, spacetime ghost grass. It's extremely effective in replenishing the origin of the spacetime law. It can also greatly increase the comprehension of the spacetime law for master gods who cultivate the spacetime law. This emperor took away your chaotic divine treasure yesterday and you lost a lot of your origin, right? This is your reward. Go back and recuperate well. Try to bring more chaotic divine demons to this emperor to trade. Zhou Marshall said calmly. Chapter 1469, Spacetime Chaotic Divine Demon Suggestion. It was just a grade 1 supreme god-level divine medicine. It was nothing to him. However, a spacetime chaotic divine demon that could provide an endless supply of chaotic divine treasures was very important to him. Therefore, he did not feel the pinch at all when he rewarded the other party with divine medicine. This is called an investment. Thank you, Your Majesty. The spacetime chaotic divine demon looked at the divine medicme in his hand that emitted the aura of a supreme god, his eyes filled with ecstasy. He could sense that this divine medicine was extremely compatible with him, just as His Majesty had said. Not only could this divine medicine help him recover his origin, it could even greatly increase his comprehension of Lord's law. Even because he and the divine medicine's nomological attributes came from the same source, after consuming it, the probability of him advancing to the supreme god realm in the future would increase by about I°/0. Even though this increase in probability of advancement seemed insignificant, it was extremely precious to spacetime chaotic divine demons. Their eyes burned at the thought of this. He couldn't help but feel even more grateful to His Majesty. At the same time, he looked forward to the future even more. He had only brought the first day of the chaotic divine demon realm to His Majesty, but he had obtained such a reward. Then, if he brought more chaotic divine demons in the future, how many benefits would His Majesty bring him? Their eyes burned at the thought of this. The time and space chaotic divine demons' divine spark trembled with excitement. Zhou Marshall did not care when he saw the spacetime chaotic divine demon's reaction. His gaze landed on the 10 chaotic divine demons. Everyone should be sure that you want to trade with this emperor, right? Zhou Marshall asked. Yes, Supreme Lord 4th Reserve Army. The leader of the chaotic divine demons that emitted the law of fire said. Then, he asked, even though we've already learned from the mouths of space and time, we still want to confirm if we can really obtain 4 Master God tier advanced grade divine artifacts at the price of 1 chaos divine treasure. As soon as he finished speaking, the other 9 chaotic divine demons only stared at Zhou Marshall, as if they wanted to see if he was telling the truth from his expression. Of course. Zhou Marshall nodded. If you don't believe me, this emperor can hand over the 4 Master God tier divine artifacts to you first. After you put them away, this emperor can personally take away your chaos divine artifacts. As soon as he said that, while the 9 chaotic divine demons marveled at Zhou Marshall's boldness, they felt much more relieved. Your Majesty, aren't you afraid that we'll leave after taking the Master God tier divine artifact? Another chaotic divine demon who walked the path of the insect law asked curiously. You won't do anything after taking the divine artifact? Zhou Marshall grinned, revealing his white and neat teeth. He smiled faintly and said, then even if you escape to the divine demon realm, even if you have the protection of your chaotic divine demon races Di Huang, this emperor can make you pay the price. Do you believe me? The chaotic divine demons present could not help but feel a great chill in their hearts after hearing it, even though he said this with a smile. This fourth reserve army of the Lord Supreme Lord could not be provoked easily. They thought to themselves, "Sir, let's make a deal now." The chaotic divine demon of the fire law hurriedly said. Zhou Marshal nodded and waved his right hand. A total of 10 world rings appeared in front of them. "Let's take a look," Zhou Marshal said. The 10 chaotic divine demons did not stand on ceremony and immediately entered with their divine senses to check. When they saw the 4 main divine artifacts that were suitable for their nomological path, a pleasantly surprised smile immediately appeared on their faces. "How is it?" Zhou Marshal asked. "Lord, the main divine artifact you provided me is too suitable for me. I'm very satisfied with this transaction." "Lord, I'm very satisfied too. Sir, why don't I just kill myself so that you don't have to do anything?" The 10 chaotic divine demon master gods said. "Let this emperor do it myself." Zhou Marshal shook his head and rejected their suggestion of taking the initiative to commit suicide and gave them world rings. Then, they handed the world rings in their hands to the spacetime chaotic divine demons for safekeeping and agreed to return them to them one by one after returning to the divine demon realm. Then, they lined up in front of Zhou Marshal and got him to personally eliminate and extract their spoils of war. There were 10 Master God tier advanced grade chaotic divine demons. Other than the first chaotic divine demon who used the explosive Lord talent effect to drop 40 chaotic divine treasures, the rest only dropped 4 chaotic divine treasures. In total, there were 76 chaotic divine treasures. Zhou Marshal looked at the 76 chaos divine treasures floating in front of him and smiled. He already had 100 chaos divine treasures in his hands. Now, with the addition of these 76 chaos divine treasures, he had 176 chaos divine treasures. He was only 24 chaos divine treasures away from the 200 chaos divine treasures needed to upgrade his territory. Tomorrow, my main body can upgrade my territory. After upgrading my territory, I can upgrade the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom from an intermediate grade Divine Kingdom to an advanced Divine Kingdom. Zhou Marshal was very satisfied with his gains today. Then, he looked at the spacetime chaotic divine demon. "Can you bring more chaotic divine demons over tomorrow?" The chaotic divine demon smiled bitterly. "Your Majesty, with my ability, bringing 10 chaotic divine demons at once is already my limit. Any more, unless I can advance to the Supreme God realm." Zhou Marshal nodded and did not mind. 10 chaotic divine demons it was. Anyway, he had gained a lot in a day. "Your Majesty, I have another way to increase the efficiency of obtaining the chaos divine treasure. It's fine as long as your Majesty is willing to give up the Master God tier divine artifact." The spacetime chaotic divine demon suddenly said. "Tell me, this emperor is not lacking in Master God tier divine artifacts?" Zhou Marshal said. The spacetime chaotic divine demon clicked his tongue and said, "As a chaotic divine demon, I can naturally only bring 10 chaotic divine demons out to trade with your Majesty. However, I still know a few chaotic divine demons who are also good at escaping from the divine demon realm. Even though their methods are not as good as mine, I can at least bring a few out. I can contact them and let them bring more chaotic divine treasures to your Majesty with me. I estimate that this way, my good friends can bring at least 30 chaotic divine demons who are willing to trade with His Majesty a day. 111 Leave this to you. You can tell this emperor what your good friend needs. This emperor can satisfy anything as long as I have it." Zhou Marshal said without hesitation. Even though he was about to reach a high-level divine kingdom, who knew if there were any higher lord factions above the high-level divine kingdoms? Just in case, and in order to accumulate some resources for his subordinates to advance their divine kingdoms, Zhou decided to make this deal. In any case, he was the one who decided if the transaction continued. When he was sure that he really did not need more Chaos Divine treasures, he could just terminate the transaction. Yes, Your Majesty. The Space-Time Chaotic Divine Demon immediately said respectfully. At this moment, several lines of information suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Marshal. He had only brought the first day of the Chaotic Divine Demon realm to His Majesty, but he had obtained such a reward. Chapter 1470, Nearly 1,000 Capital Units Army. The resources and troops of the three clans. Your Majesty, are we going back? Seeing that the 10 chaotic divine demons had been dealt with, Feng Luo walked forward and asked. Wait a minute. The resources and slave soldiers of the original spirit race, Shepherd's God race, and Chaos God's race have all been prepared. They will be sent over in a while. Prepare yourselves and receive them. Zhou Marshal said. The message he saw was the message sent by Origin. At this moment, Origin had already gathered 90% of the assets of the three races and 90% of the soldier types of the three races according to the three requests that Zhou had previously made. He was currently rushing towards him. As for why the Origin knew that Zhou Marshal was here, it was naturally Zhou Marshal who told him. Other than that, Origin also reported that he had already sent his subordinates to find the god spirits who were heading to the Ultimate Void battlefield. He only needed to summon them through the Ultimate Void battlefield function. They could come to Zhou Marshal's side or directly head to the Ultimate Void battlefield. Zhou Marshal was quite satisfied with Origin's efficiency. He did not expect the other party to complete so many complicated things in just a day. Furthermore, it was done in the Ultimate Void battlefield. Not bad, not bad. Yes, Your Majesty. Feng Luo immediately bowed respectfully upon hearing this. Then, they waited for the army of the three races to arrive. They did not make Zhou Marshal and the others wait too long. A moment later, three majestic armies broke through the chaotic airflow and chaotic divine lightning and arrived in front of Zhou Marshal. It was the alliance army of the three top bloodline races. Then, three members of the three races, emitting the aura of Master God Tier Advanced Grade, came in front of Zhou Marshal. The leader of the original spirit race, Xian Yi, greets Your Majesty. The leader of the Shepherd's God race, Jiu Tianhua, greets Your Majesty. The leader of the Chaos Gods race, Yang Du, greets Your Majesty. The leaders of the three races said respectfully to Zhou Marshal. Get up. Zhou Marshal said calmly, tell me about the situation of the army you brought. Yes, Your Majesty. The leaders of the three races said respectfully. Then, they looked at each other. It was still Xian Yi of the original spirit race who spoke first. Your Majesty, apart from bringing 90% of our race's assets, we also brought elite soldiers and god spirits from our race and its subsidiary races. Among them, our original spirit race brought a total of 256 capital units troops, 354 to 12 million god spirits, 37,911 true god tiers, and 129 master god tiers. The leader of the Shepherd's God race, Jiu Tianhua, stood out. Reporting to Your Majesty, our Shepherd's God race has brought a total of 217 capital units troops, 382, 99 million god spirits, 36,777 true god tiers, and 108 supremacy gods. In the end, the leader of the chaotic god race, Yang Du, stood up and said respectfully, Your Majesty, our Chaos Beast clan has brought a total of 197 capital units troops, 367,820,000 god spirits, 39,111 true god tiers, and 119 master god tiers. After Zhou Marshal heard this, he might have nodded slightly but he was pleasantly surprised. His original military strength was 274 capital units, 264,124,150,579,532 soldiers, 361,614,720 god spirits, 42,407 true gods, and 165 master gods. Now, with the surrender of the three top bloodline races in front of him, there were a total of 944 capital units with 264,124,150,579,532 soldiers, 1,466,454,720 god spirits, 156,206 true god tiers, and 521 supremacy gods. This number of troops, especially ordinary troops, was already very close to the total number of troops when the three top bloodline races besieged him. Even the number of god spirits was equivalent to half of the other party's number at that time. As expected, only by experiencing a large-scale war could his military strength and the number of god spirits increase rapidly. Your Majesty, these are 90% of the assets of our three races. We've already placed them all in these three super-large world rings. The leaders of the three races in front of Zhou Marshal held up world rings to him with both hands. Zhou Wu took the three world rings and entered them with his divine sense. Then, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. What huge world rings! The size of each of these three world rings was comparable to the size of 10 boundless universes. The space could be said to be extremely large. However, such a terrifying world was actually densely filled with all kinds of assets of the three races. Among them were the mist core, divine crystals, equipment, divine artifacts, building blueprints, technological information, various books, medicinal herbs, minerals, civilization inheritance, race secret techniques, ready-made race buildings. There were all kinds of treasures. This was only a race with a strong foundation like the three top bloodline races. If it were any other race, even if it was a high-level bloodline race, the assets of 10 high-level bloodline races combined would not be as many treasures as one of the world rings. Zhou Marshal looked at the treasures in the three worlds with interest. Even with his willpower realm that had just reached the will divine transformation realm, he would not be able to see all the items in the three world rings in a short period of time. However, he was in no hurry. What he didn't lack now was time. When the leaders of the three races saw that Zhou Marshal was checking the assets in the three world rings, they naturally did not stop him. Instead, they waited quietly. Zhou Marshal suddenly narrowed his eyes slightly, but he quickly returned to normal. This change in expression was extremely fast. No one present noticed Zhou Marshal's abnormality. A moment later, Zhou Marshal roughly looked at the assets of the true god tier and above in the three world rings. He put away the three world rings after confirming that there were no problems. Then, he looked up at the three race leaders in front of him. Not bad. There's no problem with the assets you sent over, and there's no problem with the military strength and the god spirits. In that case, this emperor will temporarily choose to forget the unhappy things that happened in the past. I hope you won't do anything that disappoints this emperor in the future. Zhou Marshal said calmly. We don't dare. We would never do such a thing. Xian Yi and the others said in fear and trepidation on the surface even though they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Zhou Marshal nodded calmly. They had all been beaten down to the slave race. In addition, the strength of his faction was increasing rapidly every day. He was not afraid that these guys would have any rebellious thoughts. At most, he would kill them all. He looked at the nearly 1,000 capital units troops and suddenly said. Even though this emperor has taken away most of your troops, you don't have to worry about the safety of your race and the revenge of the other races. Now, you are already this emperor's slave race. You represent the camp of this emperor and the blazing sun divine kingdom. When you encounter an enemy, report this emperor's name. I believe that even if the other party is a will-level faction, they will give this emperor some face. Thank you, your majesty. The leaders of the three races were pleasantly surprised. Chapter 1471, Reappearance of the Illusionary Legendary, Tier Sage Seal. With the words of the common people's regal, they did not have to worry about their former enemies counterattacking because their strength had decreased greatly. Moreover, with the protection of the 4th Reserve Army Supreme Lord, common people's regal, the status of the three races might be even more stable than before. And if the common people's regal successfully eliminated the reserves of the other three Supreme Lords and successfully advanced to the only Supreme Lord, the status of the three races would increase unimaginably. It was at least equivalent to a Supreme God-level force. Before they were demoted to a slave race by the common people's regal, they were only a top-notch Master God tier faction. There was no hope of becoming a Supreme God faction at all. He did not expect that after becoming a slave race, he would see hope of becoming a Supreme God faction. The leaders of the three races looked at each other and saw a dreamy and absent-minded look in each other's eyes. Then, Zhou Marshal casually instructed them to leave. After they left, Zhou Marshal directly opened the Ultimate Void Battlefield function and teleported the 2 million newly recruited God Spirits, 100,000 true God tiers, and 100 Supremacy Gods to Zhou Fight's side of the Ultimate Void Battlefield to increase his strength. Then, he immediately led the army into the 10 Master God tier Advanced Grade Cosmic Battleships. Then, through the Shadow World Warp Gate, he returned to the Blazing Sun Divine Capital. After returning to the Blazing Sun Divine Capital, Zhou Marshal got Feng Luo to lead the main combat army to continue expanding the territory of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. He immediately came to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and woke up Zhou Zhou, who had just entered a cultivation state. Zhou Marshal. What happened? Didn't I say that it's just an ordinary matter? Let Zhou fight and Zhou Zheng judge and deal with it. Don't disturb me easily. Zhou Zhou looked at Zhou Marshal and frowned slightly. When he didn't like to focus on his cultivation, someone suddenly came to disturb him. One of the reasons why he created so many clones was to get rid of these chores and focus on what he wanted to do. Main body. I've just received 90°/0 of the assets of the 3 top bloodline races and most of the soldiers and god spirits. Guess what I found out about those 90% assets? Zhou Marshal said mysteriously. What is it? Zhou Zhou asked curiously. He had yet to share Zhou Marshal's memories, so he did not know what Zhou Marshal had discovered. Zhou Marshal did not say a word. He extended his right hand and saw a seal formed by illusory lines appear in his hand. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. He had seen this thing before. Treasure name, Illusionary Legendary Tier Sage Seal, Treasure Grade, Unknown, Treasure Effect, Unknown, Treasure Description, Unknown. It's this fragment of the Legendary Tier Illusionary Sage Seal again. As Zhou Zhou pondered, he flipped his right hand and saw another fragment of the Illusionary Legendary Tier Sacred Seal in a different shape appear in front of him. The two looked like they were made of the same material, but their shapes were different. In the next second, the two Illusionary Legendary Tier Sage Seals seemed to have sensed each other's existence and suddenly trembled violently. Then, the two of them turned into two streams of light that collided at the same time and quickly fused into one, turning into a larger fragment of the Legendary Tier Sage Seal. Zhou Zhou and Zhou Wu witnessed the entire scene. Even though they were a little surprised, they did not stop it. After they fused together, Zhou Zhou waved his right hand and saw the fragment of the Illusionary Legendary Tier Sacred Seal land in his hand. He looked over. Treasure name, Illusionary Legendary Tier Sage Seal, 2/5, Treasure Grade, Unknown, Treasure Effect, Unknown, Treasure Description, Unknown. I still can't unlock these unknown content. Zhou Zhou frowned slightly, but when he saw 2/5, his brows relaxed a lot. But at least I know that there are a total of 5 Illusionary Legendary Tier Sage Seals. It's not a bad harvest. He muttered to himself as he played with the illusionary legendary tier sage seal in his hand. Then, he put away the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal. What exactly is this illusionary legendary tier sage seal? Joe Marshall could not help but ask. I don't know what it is either, but I can feel it. There are only benefits and no disadvantages in leaving this in my hands. Trust our instincts. Besides, it's related to the items of the illusionist clan. Let's keep it in our hands and observe it. Perhaps I can find the weakness of the illusionist clan from this legendary tier sacred seal one day. We'll go against the illusionist clan sooner or later after all. The current him wouldn't be afraid of any enemy. He understood. Be it the Supreme Will or the Crimson Overlord, their greatest enemy was not the ultimate void creature, but the illusionist clan that had already invaded the Yellow River. In fact, the position of Supreme Lord might have been established by the Supreme Will to nurture candidates specially to deal with the illusionist clan. Therefore, he still valued this mysterious illusionary legendary tier sage seal. He had a faint premonition. After this incomplete legendary tier sacred seal was gathered, it would be extremely useful for he to deal with the enemies of the illusionist clan. I wonder where the other 3 illusionary legendary tier sage seal fragments are. Forget it. Let nature take its course. Zhou shook his head. Then, he thought of something and asked Zhou Wu, where did you find this incomplete illusionary legendary tier sage seal? I found it in the place where the Heaven Curse beast was sealed. Zhou Marshall was already prepared. Heaven Curse beast? That's not surprising. Zhou shook his head. The conversation between the Supreme Will and the Heaven Curse beast appeared in his mind. The Heaven Curse beast came from the world of the illusionary race to begin with. This legendary tier sage seal might have been brought over by him from the world of the illusionary race. He has been hiding for so long without being discovered by the Supreme Will. Even though this Heaven Curse beast is only a Master God tier, this method is powerful enough. Zhou thought. At the same time, in the ultimate void battlefield. After a long journey, Zhou Fight and the others had already arrived at Kai's city. I didn't expect my speed in the ultimate void to still be so slow after obtaining the mythical tier 1 Lord talent. It should be because my law comprehension level is too low. Zhou Ten has just comprehended the ultimate void law. Now, he has only comprehended it to the level of a mid-tier deity level advanced grade. He's still far from acting wantonly on the ultimate void battlefield. Zhou Fight thought about it and could not help but shake his head. However, he didn't care too much. His law comprehension would increase sooner or later. It was as easy as drinking water for him to comprehend the Lord's law, let alone the ultimate void law that was more than a level lower than the Lord's law. Then, General Zhou's gaze landed on Kai's city in the distance. Kai's city was a very majestic city. It had all kinds of city defense facilities and emitted shocking nomological fluctuations. The strongest person here, Kai's, was only a grade 1 supreme god. However, with these city defense facilities, even a grade 3 supreme god realm might not be able to gain an advantage. Prepare to attack. After observing for a long time and confirming that there were no problems, Zhou Fight immediately gave the order. Yes. All the soldiers and god spirits answered in the communication channel. Chapter 1472, Grade 1 Supreme God Ultimate Void God Spirit, Kai's Fame. As the order was given, all the soldiers and god spirits silently flew out of the cosmic warship. Then, they lined up one by one and prepared their various long-range offensive law skills and spells. There was naturally no need to say anything about the Supreme Holy Mage God. As top-notch long-range Supreme Soldier types, they were best at long-range attacks. A low-level Supreme Holy Mage God could even severely injure a true God-tier God Spirit with a Supreme Divine technique. This was the power of a top Supreme Soldier type. Even though the Supreme God Realm soldiers were top-notch close combat Supreme Soldier types, it did not mean that they were not good at long-range attacks. On the contrary, they were also extremely good at long-range attacks. In terms of long-range attacks, they were not inferior to some of the last-ranked Supreme Soldier types. It was only because they were better at melee attacks that the brilliance of their long-range attacks was overshadowed. At this moment, they had accumulated the majestic aura of long-range offensive law skills. They were not inferior to some gods who were good at long-range offensive law skills. Among the gods who were preparing to cast spells, the Forbidden Mage Master God, Su Yuan, was also among them. Moreover, he had already changed his profession to the Supreme Holy Mage God. This was a choice that he had taken the initiative to make. This was because he had long realized that he was already very lucky to be able to become a Master God tier with the help of him and the Goddess of Magic. Now that he had left the Goddess of Magic, it was completely impossible for he to rely on himself to advance further and even become a Supreme God. This was because to become a Supreme God, one had to be a Khanate Regal. At the very least, he had to become a Regal the day after tomorrow. However, he wasn't even a postnatal Regal. He didn't even have the possibility of seeing the threshold of a Supreme God. So, that was why he was willing to use the Supreme Holy Mage God class change certificate that Zhou Zhou had given him to change his class to the Supreme Holy Mage God. Supreme Soldier type. It represented a great Tao with the upper limit of a Supreme God. Su Yuan felt that instead of risking his life to comprehend the supreme laws that were impossible to comprehend, it was better to use the ready-made Great Tao. He had never felt that taking a shortcut was a mistake. The premise was that a shortcut was a shortcut in the right direction, not a shortcut that looked right but actually led to a dead end. The path to becoming a Supreme Holy Mage God was undoubtedly the correct path. Speaking of which, after the soldiers began to prepare for long-range attacks, in less than a few seconds, all the Supreme Soldier types, other soldiers and God spirits were already prepared for the first wave of attacks. Fire! Bai Yun shouted. In the next second, various colorful law skills and supreme divine techniques descended from the sky and shot straight into the city of Kai's city. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Continuous explosions sounded. A few seconds later, only 1% of the city buildings had been destroyed in the entire Kai's city. The remaining city buildings were intact under the light of the city protection. However, the city protecting light also began to flicker because it had blocked too many attacks. When Zhou Feit saw this scene, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. The city defense of Kai's city was at least of the highest level. Otherwise, he would not have been able to do this. Coincidentally, my Blazing Sun Divine Capital's defensive facilities can only defend against attacks at the Master God tier level. If we can take Kai's city, we can change the defense facilities of Blazing Sun Divine Capital to the Supreme God level. Then my retreat will be more secure. Zhou Feit thought to himself. Then, he looked at Kai's city with a burning gaze. On the other side, when Bai Yun saw that her team's first wave of sneak attacks did not achieve much, she immediately prepared to launch the second wave of attacks. However, before they could finish their preparations, they saw a creature with a dark purple body and an illusory divine body fly out of Kai's city. It was Kai's city's city lord, Kai's. Interesting. How dare you attack us? Didn't you guys always carry out defensive strategies in the past? Why are you suddenly so bold? Could he know that he couldn't hold on any longer, so he took the initiative to come out and suffer death? Haha, Kai's laughed. When Zhou Feit saw this, he did not care if he would expose himself and flew out. He floated in the sky and looked down at Kai's. At the same time, he exuded the pressure of his Master God tier advance grade. Kai's expression darkened when he saw this. He coldly said, a master god dares to stand above a supreme god. The god spirit of your supreme great cosmos are really getting more and more ignorant of the rules. You're wrong. Zhou Fight said calmly, only the final winner has the right to judge the rules. Now, this emperor hasn't fallen yet. Kai's suddenly felt that something was wrong. The Lord of 10,000 Evils had never had such an arrogant and conceited subordinate. Who are you? Kais stared at Zhou Marshal and asked. This emperor is the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army. You can call this emperor, common people's regal. Zhou Fight said calmly. Since he had already entered the stage of a head-on battle, he might as well say a few more words. At the same time, he could make a name for himself in the ultimate void battleground. He did not come here to destroy this group of ultimate void creatures in silence. Destroying the ultimate void creatures was just a side event. Most importantly, he wanted to make a name for himself through this matter and prove his ability in front of the Supreme Will. Destroying the ultimate void creatures was just a side event. Most importantly, he wanted to make a name for himself through this matter and prove his ability in front of the Supreme Will. In addition, he was originally one with his main body. It was fine for him to say that he was the common people's regal and not the identity of his clone. The Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army. Kais pondered for a while and suddenly laughed out loud. So the Supreme Will also knows that his 3rd Reserve is a good-for-nothing, so he sent another helper. The Supreme Will is quite wise, isn't it? It knows how to cut its losses in time. But, Kais looked at Zhou Fight with contempt. So what if it's a Supreme Lord Reserve Army? I see that the army behind you is even inferior to the previous 3rd Reserve Army. You, the 4th Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord, are not even a Supreme God. Little doll. His eyes suddenly turned cold. What gave you the courage to stand in front of me? What courage does this emperor have? Zhou Marshal smiled faintly. You'll find out soon enough. His expression suddenly turned cold as he ordered, continue the offensive. Yes. Bai Yun immediately accepted the order. Then, he ordered all the soldiers and god spirits to immediately prepare and release the second round of long-range attacks. Humph. Kai's eyes turned cold. A layer of silver wing blades suddenly appeared on his wings. Immediately after, he flapped his wings, and countless silver flying blades flew out from his wings and flew straight towards the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Chapter 1473, Son of Destiny. Activate. Recruiting Supreme Gods. There were more than 10,000 of these wing blades, and each of them had the power of a Grade 1 Supreme God. If they all landed in the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, if the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was not destroyed in time, they would still lose 10% to 20% of their soldiers and god spirits. This guy also has a supreme divine artifact. Zhou Fight's gaze landed on the wings on Kai's back and he raised his brows slightly. However, he naturally wouldn't allow these wing blades to land on his army. He extended his right hand, and a small black bell appeared in front of him. Grade 3 Supreme Divine Artifact, Time Demonic Bell. Then, he injected an endless stream of chaotic sacred power into it. Under the activation of the chaotic sacred power, the time bell slowly swayed as it emitted visible time ripples in all directions. Under the influence of the time demon bell's time ripples, the casting speed of the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom suddenly increased by more than 10 times. In the blink of an eye, they had released 3 long-range attacks just like how Kai's and Kai's city, where he was located. The 10,000 wing blades quickly entered the range of the time ripple. Under the influence of the time ripples, the tens of thousands of wing blades seemed to have been stopped by time and suddenly stopped. Moreover, the supreme god-level power added to them was also quickly consumed under the mighty power of time. In less than a second, the 10,000 wing blades had actually collapsed and dissipated because they had exhausted the supreme divine power inside. As for Kai's city, due to the continuous joint attack of the spread of the army, not only did it lose about 3 to 4% of its internal buildings, but even the ultimate void soldiers and creatures inside were injured or dead. Kai's, who had witnessed the entire process, had a gloomy expression. He never expected that to happen. He was fighting with a master god, and the one who was at a disadvantage in the end was actually him, a supreme god. It was simply a rebellion against the heavenly dipper. Even though the supreme divine artifact in the other party's hand and his ability to use the supreme divine artifact above his level was an important reason why he could gain the upper hand. However, he still felt embarrassed. Good. Very good. Kai's gritted his teeth. He was prepared to take action personally and deal with the 4th Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord first. With his strength as a Grade 1 Supreme God and the support of the army in Kai's city, killing this common people's regal was a simple matter among a group of enemies who were no higher than Master God tier. This way, he would be able to resolve this war as quickly as possible and redeem his lost face. However, in the next second, he realized that Zhou Fight had done something strange. Son of Destiny, activate. The Lord Talent notification appeared. Prompt: you have activated your supreme unique Lord Talent, Son of Destiny. You have been blessed by the heavens. 50% of the enemies in the enemy Lord's faction have been summoned by the heavens and have become your loyal subordinates. Lord Talent Notification 1, a total of 1,028,739,887 low-tier deity level Ultimate Void God Spirits, 553,429,893 mid-tier deity level Ultimate Void God Spirits, 287,332,323 high-tier deity level Ultimate Void God Spirits, 2,388,734 Ultimate Void True God tiers, 512 Ultimate Void Master God tiers, and 1 Grade 1 Ultimate Void Supreme God left their organizations and became your destiny follower. In the next second before Kai's could react, Kai's city, which was behind him, suddenly had a huge uprising. Ultimate Void God Spirits, True God tiers, and even Master God tiers started a massacre in Kai's city. In their eyes, their former comrades and friends seemed to have become enemies that would not rest until they died. They did not hold back in their every attack. In less than a moment, they had caused huge casualties in Kai's city. Countless screams rang out, stunning Kai's. He was even at a loss. What was going on? Because the Supreme Will guarded the Ultimate Void creatures tightly, even if the Ultimate Void creatures were good at gathering information, they could not gather any internal information of the Supreme Great Cosmos. Therefore, they did not understand the methods of this common people's regal at all. If they understood Zhou Fight's methods, they might have taken precautions long ago. However, they did not understand and did not take precautions, resulting in this irreversible outcome. Soon, Kai's finally came back to his senses. Stop it. Do you know what you're doing? Mashas? Prayman? Amaze, you're killing our people. No matter how magnanimous Kai's was, after seeing the internal strife in front of him, his defense was finally broken. Especially the Ultimate Void generals that he had shouted. Not only were they existences who had hopes of becoming supreme gods in the future, but they were also his capable subordinates and true confidants. However, at this moment, it was as if they did not know him. They were all releasing their void divine power to their heart's content and slaughtering their own people. D***it. It must be that guy's strange method. Kai's suddenly turned to look at Zhou Fight, his eyes filled with anger. Even though this Supreme Lord Reserve Army was far inferior to that Lord of 10,000 Evils in terms of strength, at this moment, not only did he possess a rare Supreme Divine artifact, but he also possessed such a strange nomological technique. There was no time to think. He couldn't care less about continuing to deal with Zhou Fight and his army. He instantly disappeared from his original spot. In the next moment, he had already arrived in Kai's city and appeared in front of an ultimate void master god tier who was slaughtering the ultimate void god spirits. Prayman! Wake up! With a flap of his wings, Kais sent the other party flying a light year away, severely injuring him and rendering him immobile. However, when Kais went over to detain the other party, a giant ultimate void god spirit with a dark purple body and a huge body that looked like a Jurassic dinosaur appeared in front of Kais. Savas, you're here. Kais heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the other party appear. Then, he said in shame, "I'm sorry to have let you see this embarrassing scene. Initially, I invited you over to have fun with you. I didn't expect to encounter such a thing. Forget it, there's no time to talk. Savas, help me suppress this internal strife. After this internal strife is over, I owe you a favor." Kais wanted to bypass him and detain Prayman with that. However, in the next second, Savas stood in front of him with a calm expression, blocking his path. "What are you doing?" Kais was stunned. Then, he looked at the other party's calm, deep, and unfamiliar face and suddenly thought of something. He said in disbelief and with an ugly expression, "Don't tell me you, Kais." Savas suddenly spoke. He looked at Kais calmly. "Surrender. I'm a grade 2 supreme god, and you're only a grade 1 supreme god. You're not my match, much less my lord's. Your master. Isn't our master the great Void Emperor?" Kais looked at Savas and said. "Void Emperor? That's just a guy who knows how to run. My lord. It's the great Your Excellency Common People's Regal." Savas raised his head proudly. Chapter 1474, The Void Emperor's True Blood. Kai's expression turned ugly when he heard this. "Even you," he said in disbelief. Then, his expression suddenly calmed down. He turned to look at Zhou Fight. "Fourth Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord, is this how you dare to stand in front of me? You're indeed extraordinary. Your lord's nomological path must be an extremely high-ranked lord's nomological path, or even a powerful lord's nomological path that has never been discovered, right?" Kais said coldly. "Yes or no, has no meaning to you unless you choose to surrender to this emperor, or die under the hands of this colleague of yours." Zhou Fight said calmly. He was actually very surprised. He actually did not have much hope that his son of destiny would be able to incite defection to become a supreme god-level ultimate void god spirit before he came. This was because according to the principle of the son of destiny's incite defection, it was mostly unable to instigate the leader of the enemy faction. Kais was the highest leader of Kai's city, so Zhou Fight did not have much hope for incite defection Kais. His original idea was that even if he couldn't instigate the incite defection to Kais, he could at least instigate 50% of his subordinates. This way, he could at least increase his chances of winning. And then, "I'll deal with Kais myself." Kais was only a grade 1 supreme god. He realized that the suppression on his combat strength had disappeared after he obtained the mythical tier unique lord talent, the ultimate void battlefield. Under the circumstance that he could unleash his full combat strength, coupled with the help of a set of supreme divine artifacts, it was completely possible for him to kill such a grade 1 supreme god. That was why he had the confidence to accept this mission and find trouble with Kais. However, he never expected this. While he did not incite Kais, he actually incited another supreme god. Moreover, it was a supreme god who was even more powerful. Furthermore, from the information Savas had sent to him, he had only agreed to Kais' request on a whim today. That was why he had suddenly come to his place to have fun with him. He had never expected that Zhou Feit would suddenly lead an army to attack him. He had never expected that an outsider like him would become the target of incite defection. It could only be said that everything was the result of a freak combination of factors. Zhou Feit smirked at the thought of this. I've been lucky today. I can't believe I can even incite an incite defection supreme god. Before I came, I thought Kai's was the only supreme god in Kai's city. When he thought of this, he was suddenly taken aback. Then, he fell into deep thought. Lucky? Could the titles and lord talents that were enhanced by my luck be working? Thinking of this, Zhou Feit could not help but smile. Unexpectedly, luck was an illusory thing that could not be seen or touched usually. When it was really needed, it would really go for it. If that's the case, I'll give you another one. Zhou Feit smiled and pointed at Kai's city and Kai's from afar. He activated Heavenly Fate Di Huang's ability to extract the enemy's good luck, leaving only bad luck. At the same time, Kai's did not respond to Zhou Feit's words. Instead, he turned around and looked straight at Savas. Savas. I'll ask you again. Are you really going to stop me? He asked in a deep voice. Stop you? No, I should take you down or kill you. Savas smiled. As a Grade 1 Supreme God, he had the right to say such words in front of the Grade 1 Supreme God Kai's. You made me do it. Kai's took a deep breath and said softly. Then, he took out a drop of blood that emitted a faint silver light from his void creature bag. This blood emitted a shocking pressure as soon as it was taken out. As a Grade 2 Supreme God, Sava's divine body actually began to crumble in the face of this pressure. The true blood of the Void Emperor. You were actually bestowed with such a divine item by the Void Emperor. Savas immediately recognized the drop of silver blood and said in horror. This isn't a reward for me, but for our heavenly winged mantis clan's patriarch. The patriarch saw that I was stationed in the nearest war zone to Lord of 10,000 Evil's base, so he gave it to me. Kai's looked at the drop of silver blood with blurry eyes. I thought I would never use it in my life. I didn't expect to be forced to use it by a reserve Supreme Lord who's not even a Supreme God. His expression instantly turned firm as he said in a deep voice, After I kill you, I'll immediately report to Your Excellency the Void Emperor and tell Your Excellency about the existence of the 4th Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord and his methods. At that time, with Your Excellency's methods, the great common people's regal that you think is worthy of being an ant that Your Excellency casually crushed and killed. With that, Kai's raised his head and swallowed the drop of blood into his body. Almost instantly, his aura began to increase rapidly. Grade 2 Supreme God Realm. Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. Grade 4 Supreme God Realm. In less than 10 seconds, Kai's had advanced from a Grade 1 Supreme God to a Grade 4 Supreme God. Furthermore, his divine body had turned completely dark silver, and its form was somewhat similar to the legendary Void Emperor. Even the pressure he emitted was enough to make any ultimate void creature feel fear from the depths of their blood. All of this was naturally affected by the drop of true blood. And seeing how powerful Kai's had become, even though he was filled with fear, he didn't have any thoughts of retreating. Under the influence of the Son of Destiny, his basic loyalty had already reached 99, infinitely close to the level of a fanatic believer. He was naturally unwilling to escape from his opponent out of fear without receiving the Lord's orders. Not only would that violate the Lord's orders, but it would also make he feel that he had suffered humiliation because of his cowardice. Traitor, aren't you going to run? Kai's looked at Savas with a faint smile. For the great common people's regal, Your Excellency, I will never run away. Savas said firmly even though he was afraid. When Kai saw this, the smile on his face gradually disappeared, and his expression gradually became serious. He didn't expect the methods of the common people's regal to be so strange. Not only could he make his people submit to him in an instant, he could also turn him into subordinates comparable to fanatic believers. This ability was simply too terrifying. This Supreme Lord's reserve army must not be left alive. Otherwise, he would definitely become a huge threat to their ultimate Void clan in the future. At the thought of this, he did not waste any more time. He was prepared to kill Savas immediately before returning to the Void Emperor's side to report. As for relying on his own strength to forcefully kill common people's regal, he thought for a moment and gave up on this idea. This was because his premonition as a grade 4 supreme god told him that even if he had temporarily obtained the strength of a 4th grade supreme god, there was a high chance that he would not succeed in destroying that common people's regal. Even though he found this premonition somewhat unbelievable, he chose to believe in his intuition. Die, Savas. Kais teleported in front of Savas. Chapter 1475, Capturing Kai's City. The shocked Lord of 10,000 Evils. Kais flapped the wings on his back and was about to kill Savas, who could no longer move. Suddenly. Cluck cluck cluck. Pft. A look of disbelief appeared in Kai's eyes. Then, he spat out a large mouthful of dark purple bodily fluid. In the next moment, Savas sensed that Kai's strength was falling at an even faster speed. Grade 3 Supreme God Realm. Grade 2 Supreme God. Grade 1 Supreme God. Master God Tier Advanced Grade. This ultimate Void God Spirit, who had just possessed the strength of a top-notch Grade 4 Supreme God, actually fell to the Master God Tier level in an instant. He could not even maintain his original strength. How is that possible? Kais said in disbelief as he felt his weakened body. Using the Void Emperor's true blood to forcefully increase his strength would indeed have a certain backlash in the future. How long had it been since he consumed the Void Emperor's true blood? He hadn't even attacked once, and the use of true blood had already expired. A guess suddenly appeared in his mind. His compatibility with the Void Emperor's true blood was extremely low. Only this guess could explain why the effects of the true blood had disappeared not long after he had consumed it, and why he had suffered such a serious backlash. Is my luck that bad? Kais was in despair. As a Grade 1 Supreme God of the ultimate Void race, he had never expected he to have such a low compatibility with the true blood of the Void Emperor. But that was the truth. He had no choice but to accept reality. As for Savas, he couldn't help but be stunned in the beginning when he faced Kais, whose strength had greatly decreased. But soon, he began to mock him. You actually have such a low compatibility with the Void Emperor's true blood? Ha, this is how your life should be today. Kais snorted but didn't say anything. Savas sneered and asked again, Kais, the situation is clear. I'll ask you again, are you willing to surrender to my master? I, a supreme god, surrender to a master god tier like him? Kais laughed out loud as if he had heard a huge joke. Then, he said coldly, say no more. Just kill me. Savas looked at Zhou Fight. Zhou Fight nodded from afar. You asked for it. Savas shook his head. Then, he drew the void axe on his back and chopped off Kai's head. Then, he used the void divine power to destroy his divine spark. Only then did he die. At the same time Kais died, a line of text appeared in front of Zhou Fight. Ultimate Void Battlefield Mission Tips. Your subjects have killed the Lord of Kais City, Kais, first level Supreme God, and you have received 1 million military merit points and 1 Supreme God level mission medal. Zhou Fight smiled faintly. Next, we only need to occupy the entire Kais city and this mission will be completed. He muttered to himself. He looked at the battlefield in front of him. At this moment, the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was using long-range attacks to continuously attack Kai's city. At the same time, the ultimate Void God spirits in Kai's city, who had been instigated by Zhou Feit's insight defection, were also fighting inside. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that on this battlefield, his army already had an absolute advantage. It was only a matter of time before he took Kai's city. Next, as long as he broke through Kai's city's defenses, he would be able to completely take over Kai's city. At this moment, Savas flew to Zhou Feit with Kai's corpse. "My lord," Savas said respectfully. "You can just call me your majesty." Zhou Feit said calmly. "Yes, your majesty." Savas grabbed Kai's corpse and offered it to Zhou Feit. He said fervently, "Your majesty, this is Kai's corpse. I would like to offer it to you." "Yes, I'll count it as your contribution. Leave the corpses behind. Go and break through the defense of Kai's city." Zhou Feit said. "Yes, your majesty." Savas nodded and turned to look at Kai's city with a sinister smile. If Kai's was still around and he was in charge of Kai's city's defense facilities, he would never dare to break through his defenses because it was impossible. Even though Kai's was only a grade 1 supreme god, with Kai's city's supreme god level defense facilities, a grade 4 supreme god could not easily break through Kai's city. However, not only had Kai's fallen, even the interior of Kai's city had fallen into internal strife, leaving Kai's city with less than 10% of its defensive strength. Under such circumstances, Savas was very confident that he could break through Kai's city's defense alone. "This is the first order His Majesty has given me. It has to be done perfectly." Savas stroked his grade 2 Supreme God Divine artifact with a solemn expression. In the next second, he flew straight to Kai's city. The 10 ultimate Void Master God tiers, who were overseeing the defense of Kai's city, hurriedly focused on defending against this supreme god when they saw Savas rushing over. They had all seen it just now. It was this city lord's good friend who personally beheaded him. Naturally, they would not regard the other party as an ally. At this moment, Savas, who had already arrived in Kai's city, slashed his first, second, third, fourth in the blink of an eye. He slashed out 16 times in a row, and each strike was an all-out offensive. 16 slashes later, the most important supreme god-level defensive light shield in Kai's city was directly broken by Savas. At this moment, Kai's city was like a beautiful little girl who had lost the means to protect herself. Facing the greedy gazes of outsiders, she had no means to protect herself at all. Savas laughed loudly and rushed in. Together with the Insight Defection army, he killed the ultimate Void God spirits who had not been incited. 3 hours later, all the ultimate Void God spirits that had not been incited by Insight Defection were all killed, turning into a massive amount of promotion energy that increased the strength of all the God spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Kai's city was also completely occupied by Zhou Feit. At the same time, Demon Lord Base Planet. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was in his sacred hall, thinking about how to get along with this new Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army in the future. The ultimate Void race was extremely difficult to deal with. Lord of 10,000 Evils felt that there was a high chance that the two of them would spend a long time together in the future. They might even have to support each other. Since that was the case, it was best to befriend the other party. But how should he befriend them? How should he befriend them? Who was in charge of the two? How should he strive for dominance? All sorts of problems were things that he had to think about. At this moment, an ultimate evil spirit instantly appeared below the hall. "Your Majesty, there's the latest news from that Common People's Regal." "What news?" "Did Common People's Regal finally choose to retreat after losing to Kai's?" "Hurry up and welcome them. Pay attention to your attitude. Don't let them think that we're here to watch them make a fool of themselves." The Lord of 10,000 Evils casually instructed. The Master God Tier level ultimate evil spirit fell silent for a second before saying with difficulty, "Your Majesty. The 4th Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord has successfully breached Kai's city, killed City Lord Kais, and in sight surrendered another level 2 ultimate void supreme god, Savas. Capture Kai's city." The Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded. Then, he suddenly reacted and stood up from his throne, staring at the other party. "What did you say?" Chapter 1476, All Gods Announcement. Reward. The Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army has already breached Kai's city and killed the Grade 1 Supreme God, Kais. He also made the other Grade 2 Ultimate Void Supreme God surrender. The Ultimate Evil Spirit Master God Tier explained succinctly again. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. How did he do it? He uttered in disbelief after a long time in silence. "Your Majesty, please take a look." The Ultimate Evil Spirit took out a crystal ball and injected divine power into it. Then, an illusory projection appeared in front of Lord of 10,000 Evils. The illusory projection showed the entire process of the Divine Kingdom's army attacking Kai's city, then Kai's dying in battle, and finally, Kai's city being completely occupied by the Zhou fight. When Lord of 10,000 Evils saw the internal strife in Kai's city, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide. His eyes immediately widened in shock when he saw Kais confronting Savas and being beheaded by him. And he was completely silent when he saw that Kai's city was completely occupied. The Ultimate Evil Spirit Master God did not speak either. In fact, he still couldn't believe that what he saw was true until now. However, everything he had recorded was like ironclad evidence that what he had seen was not fake. But, how could this Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army be so strong? With just a raise of their hands, they had changed the situation on the battlefield, making the situation that they should not have been able to defeat become an absolute advantage in the blink of an eye. They had even recruited a level 2 Ultimate Void Supreme God. They did not even dare to think about such a situation in the past. However, they felt like they were dreaming now that it had really happened in front of them. The Supreme will ask this Lord 4th Reserve to come over because it really thinks that he can help us resist the Ultimate Void race. Perhaps we can really defeat the Ultimate Void race and leave this place forever with the help of this Lord. The Ultimate Evil Spirit began to let its imagination run wild. What to do? Zhou Fight's actions of capturing Kai's city in a short period of time had really shocked him too much. The Lord of 10,000 Evils had similar thoughts. He had a complicated expression. Of course, they knew about this Kai's city. In fact, because this city was very close to the planet where the Demon Lord's base was, they had fought dozens of times openly and covertly. However, because of the powerful defense facilities of Kai's city, even if Lord of 10,000 Evils was already a Grade 3 Supreme God realm, he could not break through the defense of Kai's city, let alone kill Kais and completely occupy it. And now, this matter was actually done by this new Supreme Lord Reserve Army who had just come from the Great Cosmos. Thinking about how he had previously thought that the other party was bragging, no matter how much Lord of 10,000 Evils had experienced, he could not help but blush. What is the common people's regal doing now? The Lord of 10,000 Evils came back to his senses and immediately asked. That Lord is currently reorganizing Kai's city. He should be back when he is done. The Ultimate Evil Spirit Master Godtier said. The Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded and thought for a moment before saying, prepare a banquet and invite the god spirits of the various races to attend to celebrate the first great victory the common people's regal has brought us in the past 1,000 years. Also, send out an all-god announcement to the battle channel of the myriad races to inform them of the results of the god spirits and common people's regal. Yes, your majesty. The Ultimate Evil Spirit Master Godtier said respectfully. Then, he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything and left to do something. The Lord of 10,000 Evils fell silent for a while after the other party left. Then, he could not help but open the photo orb again and carefully examine the entire process of Zhou fight attacking Kai's city. He turned off the image pearl and said with a complicated tone after he looked at it 5 or 6 times. What an astonishing method. No wonder they were able to capture Kai's city the moment they arrived. If his lord's nomological path was comprehended by himself, his future would be limitless. Maybe even the Supreme Lord. He fell silent for a moment before shaking his head. He felt that he couldn't come to a conclusion too early. This newly advanced Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army had shocking Lord Law methods. However, those 2 Supreme Lord Reserves were not easy to deal with either. If the 3 were to compare, he still felt that the common people's regal did not have any advantage. He had only grown up for a short time after all. If he had grown up for a longer time, he might really be able to compete with the other 2 Supreme Lord Reserve armies. At the same time in the main hall in the Kai's city, which was very far away from the Demon Lord's base planet, Zhou Fight sat on the throne that Kai's had once sat on and looked at the text notification in front of him. Ultimate Void Battlefield Mission Hint 1, you have completely captured Kai's city. You have obtained 1 million military credits. Ultimate Void Battlefield Mission Hint 2, congratulations, you have completely completed the Grade 1 Supreme God mission, conquering the Grade 1 Supreme God War territory, Kai's city. Zhou Fight smiled and turned off the mission notification to wait. At this moment, he suddenly felt something and opened the battle channel of all races. In the friend list of the 10,000 races battle channel, a message from Lord of 10,000 Evils and more than 9,999 friend requests were constantly flashing. Zhou Fight was stunned. Then, he opened the message from Lord of 10,000 Evils. Lord of 10,000 Evils, Brother Common People's Regal, you have good methods. You actually broke through Kai's city so quickly. I really didn't expect this. Impressive, impressive. The corners of Zhou Fight's mouth twitched when he saw this. Since when did you address me OS, brother? Now that you know that I've captured Kai's city, you're calling me Brother Common People's Regal? Smart. He typed a reply, Common People's Regal, I was lucky. I originally thought that it wouldn't be so simple. I didn't expect that it would cause me to instigate Insight defection to become a supreme god, which allowed this battle to end so quickly. I even planned to personally kill Kai's and occupy Kai's city. Lord of 10,000 Evils, it's easy to say, but it's still very dangerous, right? Speaking of which, I've wanted to settle in this Kai's city for a long time, but I haven't had the time. This time, I have to thank Brother Common People's Regal. When you come back, well, have a good drink. Common People's Regal, okay. Lord of 10,000 Evils, by the way, brother, you can watch the battle channel of the myriad races. Zhou Fight was a little curious when he saw this. Then, he opened the All Races Combat channel. Then, he saw a huge red announcement standing at the top of the All Races Combat channel. All God announcement, congratulations to our Supreme Lord of 10,000 Evils. As the leader of the Supreme will camp in the Ultimate Void battlefield, I will take out 5 million military merits and 2 Supreme God mission medals as rewards. Chapter 1477, Occupying Kai's City. Blazing Sun Base Planet No. 1. Zhou Fight was stunned after reading it. Then, he shook his head and laughed. He did not expect this Lord of 10,000 Evils to suddenly do this. This was really surprising. However, it was not bad. At the very least, it proved that this Lord of 10,000 Evils did not have any hostility towards him on the surface. Otherwise, there was no need for him to do these things to increase the enemy's strength. 5 million military merits and 2 Supreme God mission medals were already very good rewards. It was even enough to exchange for some good racial divine artifacts in the Supreme God Realm Monument. At this moment, when the god spirits in the battle channel saw this all-god announcement, they immediately stirred. Did I hear wrongly? Kai's city was breached by the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army. Kai's city has Supreme God-level defense facilities. Under case control, even a Grade 4 Supreme God can't break through Kai's city. How did the common people's regal break through? I'm shocked. I've followed Lord of 10,000 Evils to attack Kai's city together in the past, but I've always returned empty-handed. Many god spirits even died, and more than 100 Master God tier died. Wasn't the common people's regal just promoted to the Supreme Lord Reserve Army not long ago? He doesn't even have a Supreme God level expert under him, right? How did he attack Kai's city? I didn't expect the common people's regal to not only make a name for himself in the supreme great cosmos, but he can also become famous even in the ultimate void battlefield where god spirits are gathered. As expected of the latest Supreme Lord Reserve Army selected by the Supreme Will. Extraordinary indeed. The common people's regal is here. The god spirits of the Supreme Will camp in our ultimate void battlefield are going to have a better life. Roar. The god spirits in the battle channel discussed. There was no lack of god spirits who had already heard of the reputation of the common people's regal in the supreme great cosmos. They did not expect that this lord of the myriad races who had just risen would still be able to contribute greatly in the ancient battlefield of the ultimate void battlefield. This also made them completely convinced. As expected of your excellency, common people's regal. You're the most outstanding and outstanding no matter where you go. After Zhou Fight saw these guys' comments, he smiled and did not say anything. He only thanked Lord of 10,000 Evils for the reward in a private chat. Lord of 10,000 Evils was very polite, indicating that he deserved all of this. The two of them exchanged a few pleasantries and did not like to talk much. This Lord of 10,000 Evils has such a scary title. I didn't expect him to be so easy to communicate with. Zhou Fight was amazed. Of course, it was also possible that he had seen hope of defeating the ultimate void creature through his battle results, which was why he was so polite. If not for this, Lord of 10,000 Evils' attitude might not have been so good. At this moment, Sabas teleported into the main hall and said respectfully to Zhou Fight, Your Majesty, the core of Kai's city's base star core has been found. Lead the way. Zhou Fight said. Yes, Your Majesty. Please follow me. Savas and Zhou Zhan disappeared from the main hall almost at the same time. In another dignified and mysterious hall. A dark purple ball of light floated in the middle of the hall. Rows of ultimate void race words floated around the dark purple ball of light, making it even more mysterious and ancient. At this moment, Savas and Zhou Zhan appeared in front of the dark purple ball of light. Your Majesty. This is the core of Kai's city's void base. It can cover and affect the battlefield territory within a radius of 50 million light-years. This base star core was originally personally created by the Supreme Will and used to manage and protect the ultimate void battlefield. Later on, because the ultimate void race was powerful, Lord of 10,000 Evils lost the battlefield territory of the ultimate void battlefield repeatedly. This base star core finally fell into the hands of the ultimate void race. Through the method of void pollution, it became a treasure for the ultimate void race to manage the territory of the ultimate void battlefield. Savas said respectfully. Zhou Fight nodded. Then, he walked in front of the contaminated base star core. He looked at the base star core. A text notification appeared. Base name, Kai's City, Grade 1 Supreme God Base, Treasure Name, Void Base Star Core, Polluted, Treasure Grade, Grade 1 Supreme God, Treasure Effect. After determining the location of the base, it can become the core of the base. With the base star core as the center, it can create any kind of base and add any buildings. At the same time, it can monitor all life forms within a radius of 50 million light-years. Note 1, this base star core is a polluted void base star core. You can purify it with 1 million military credits and restore it to its original appearance and effect. Note 2, if you fuse 3 Grade 1 Supreme God base star cores or void base star cores, you can evolve them into Grade 2 Supreme God base star cores or Grade 2 Supreme God void base star cores. Prompt, do you want to purify and occupy it? A smile appeared on Zhou Feit's face after reading it. As expected, this base star core was the same as the territory order on the high continent. They could both be occupied and become their territory. And the price was only 1 million points. It was far cheaper than exchanging for it in the Supreme God Realm Monument. Purify and occupy. Zhou Feit said without hesitation. In the next second, a text notification appeared. In the process of purification, Zhou Feit looked at the base star core. The base star core that was emitting a dark purple light suddenly seemed to be boiling like hot water. The light on the surface kept rising, and the dark purple light was forced out bit by bit and dissipated in the void. A moment later, after all the dark purple light dissipated, they saw that the original dark purple base star core had already turned into a white ball of light that emitted a pure white and gentle light. A text notification appeared. Congratulations, you have successfully occupied Kai's city, Grade 1 Supreme God Level War Base, and purified the Void Base Star Core. Please name your war base and choose the form of your base. A bunch of options appeared in front of Zhou Feit as soon as he finished speaking. There were megacities, planets, continents, secret realms, islands, black holes. There were all kinds of forms. After some thought, Zhou Feit replied, the war base is called Blazing Sun Base Planet No. 1. The base form also chooses the planet. Even though Zhou Feit had been in the high continent for a long time, he was still used to living on a planet, so he chose the form of a planet. Change completed. Zhou Feit looked over. Base name, Blazing Sun Base Planet No. 1, Grade 1 Supreme God Base, Treasure Name, Supreme Base Star Core, Treasure Grade, Grade 1 Supreme God, Treasure Effect. After determining the location of the base, it can become the core of the base. With the base star core as the center, it can create any kind of base and add any buildings. At the same time, it can monitor all life forms within a radius of 50 million light-years. Note 2, if you fuse 3 Grade 1 Supreme God Base Star Cores or Void Base Star Cores, you can evolve them into Grade 2 Supreme God Base Star Cores or Grade 2 Supreme God Void Base Star Cores. Zhou Feit nodded in satisfaction after reading it. Chapter 1478, Void Emperor. Editor Atlas Studios, this can be considered my first base in the ultimate Void battleground. It feels like it's my first time exploring. Zhou Feit chuckled. He walked out of the temple and realized that the place he was at had unknowingly become a base planet. Even though this base planet was not as big as the Demon Lord's base planet, it was still the size of thousands of boundless universes combined. On the surface of this base planet, there were all kinds of basic building facilities, including the Divine Artifact Forging Hall, Cultivation Hall, Meditation Room, Enlightenment Room, Time Acceleration Array, Healing Room, Teleportation Array. There were all kinds of construction facilities specially for god spirits. Zhou Feit was very satisfied after reading it. This saved him the need to rebuild this place. It saved him a large sum of money and time. It also allowed him to focus on dealing with the ultimate void race. Then, with a thought, he opened his military merit panel. User, Lord of the Blazing Sun, Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army, Ultimate Void Battlefield 2nd Leader of the Supreme Will Camp, Military Merits, 6 million points Mission Medal, 3 Supreme Mission Medals, 6 million Military Merits and 3 Supreme Mission Medals. It's enough for me to exchange for some good things. Especially that treasure. Zhou Fei said to himself with a smile. As for the ultimate void battlefield, second leader of the Supreme Will camp that it introduced, Zhou Fei was not surprised. The first leader was naturally the veteran Supreme Lord Reserve, Lord of 10,000 Evils. As for the second leader, it was he, the last Supreme Lord's Fourth Reserve Army. He had a high status even though his strength was average. It was naturally not a problem for him to have the status of a leader. Savas, Yuan Song, stay here and guard Blazing Sun Base Planet No. 1. Bai Yun, Qi Xiantian, follow this emperor to the Demon Lord's base planet. Zhou sent a voice transmission. Yes, Your Majesty. For respectful voices came from all directions of the Blazing Sun Base Planet No. 1. Then, Bai Yun and Qi Xiantian immediately flew over and arrived beside Zhou Fei. They went to the Demon Lord base planet through the teleportation array of the base with Zhou Zhan. At the same time that Kai's died. Behind the ultimate void battleground, in an incomparably huge heaven ascension holy temple that was completely dark silver and reflected the illusory images of the myriad worlds on the surface. A powerful life form wearing dark silver armor and a dark silver holy crown on its head had 3 eyes and 6 hands. Each of its hands held a completely different willpower holy artifact. It was sitting on the highest holy seat and resting with its eyes closed. Below him were more than 2,000 ultimate void supreme gods. Each of them emitted a powerful supreme god aura, and each supreme god had at least 1 or 2 supreme divine artifacts. Some of the top ultimate void supreme gods who were at the front and powerful were even wearing a full set of supreme divine artifacts. When any god spirit saw this scene, they would be dumbfounded and exclaim that the other party was wealthy. With so many supreme divine artifacts, even the Supreme Will could not take them out in a short period of time. At this moment, there was a click. All the ultimate void supreme gods were stunned for a moment before looking up at the ceiling of the dark silver sky reaching holy temple. The ceiling was made of dark silver tiles that looked like mirrors. On the surface of every tile, the figure and appearance of an ultimate void supreme god were vaguely revealed. And at this moment, one of the tiles suddenly made a cracking sound. Then, cracks appeared on the surface of this tile, and finally, splash! This tile completely shattered into powder and landed in front of all the ultimate void supreme gods. The illusory divine shadow in the tile naturally dissipated and disappeared. The 2,000 supreme gods looked at the floating powder solemnly. Many ultimate void supreme gods looked angry and murderous. At this moment, the powerful life form sitting high on the holy throne and resting with his eyes closed spoke slowly. Looks like our companion, Kai's, has already died. And the one who killed Kai's was a powerhouse from the Supreme Will faction. This is the first ultimate void supreme god to die in our ultimate void race in 1,000 years. Interesting. Something must have happened to the Supreme Will. Otherwise, it would be impossible to kill Kai's, who is protected by Kai's city. Rhoda. The powerful life form spoke. My lord. A grade 4 ultimate void supreme god that looked like a bat with dark purple eyes and a pale face stood out from the 2,000 supreme gods. His position was very close to the front, close to a powerful life form. It could be seen how powerful he was. He said respectfully to this powerful life form. And since he addressed him as my lord, this powerful life form was naturally the most powerful and supreme ultimate void race's Di Huang, the Void Emperor. Go investigate. After you get the results, tell me the reason why Kai's was killed immediately. The Void Emperor said. Yes, my lord. Rhoda said respectfully. The Void Emperor nodded. He still didn't open his eyes, looking like he was sleeping. On the other hand, this grade 4 ultimate void supreme god did not dare to slack off at all. He immediately passed the supreme gods and left the temple to carry out the mission given to him by the Void Emperor. An unknown expert from the Supreme Will's camp. Your death is near. Rhoda's deep voice echoed in the void for a long time. On the other side, Zhou Fight and the others had already teleported to the Demon Lord base planet. Zhou Fight and the other two saw Lord of 10,000 Evils and the god spirits under him standing neatly outside the teleportation array, waiting for them as soon as they returned. After they walked out of the spatial teleportation array, they saw Lord of 10,000 Evils walk over and laugh. Welcome back, our hero. Let's go. Let's go have a drink. At the same time, he'll congratulate you for taking down Kai's city and obtaining your first war base. I want to go to the Supreme God Realm Monument first. Zhou Fight shook his head. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned before he smiled. That's true. I just won a battle. It's time to exchange for something good. Then you guys can go first. I'll wait for you guys in the Taotai Demon Palace with the other god spirits. Don't break your promise. The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled kindly. Sure. Zhou Fight nodded. He happened to have some things that he wanted to understand from Lord of 10,000 Evils. The Supreme God Realm Monument was already empty when Zhou Fight arrived. The power of Zhou Fights will spread out and covered the god spirits further away. Only then did he know why there was no one around. It turned out that Lord of 10,000 Evils knew that he was going to use the Supreme God Realm Monument, so he simply cleared the surroundings of the Supreme God Realm Monument so that Zhou Fight could enjoy it alone to exchange for the divine items inside. Zhou Fight clicked his tongue but did not say anything. Even though people who enjoyed privileges would be envied and jealous, that was because such privileges did not fall on them. When privileges fell on them, who would hate privileges? Coincidentally, I don't want other god spirits to see what the divine item I want to exchange for is. Zhou Fight muttered to himself. Then, he placed his hand on the Supreme God Realm Monument. Chapter 1479, Advanced Race Divine Artifact, Holy Fate Umbrella. Soon, a vast amount of treasure information surged into Zhou Fight's mind from the Supreme God Realm Monument. From special treasures to divine artifacts of various levels, to low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifacts, to grade 4 Supreme God divine artifacts, there was everything. Apart from that, there were racial divine artifacts. Zhou Fight opened the racial divine artifact interface and scrolled down. Soon, he found the target of his trip. Race Artifact, Holy Fate Umbrella, Advanced Race Artifact hide and protect the fate of oneself and subordinates, prevent being spied on and cursed by other gods, ignore any form of instant death effect, even the Supreme God cannot harm the owner of the Holy Fate Umbrella and subordinates through the law of fate. Military merit required for redemption, 6 million military merit points, 3 Master God tier mission medals. When Zhou Fight saw this racial divine artifact, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Then, he did not hesitate to exchange all his military merits and mission medals for this racial divine artifact. In the next second, the Holy Fate Umbrella appeared out of thin air in front of him. Zhou Fight stretched out his hands and took the Holy Fate Umbrella. He looked at this high-level racial divine artifact with a burning gaze. Then, he took a look at his military merit information. As expected, he realized that the 6 million military merits and the 3 Supreme God mission medals he had just obtained had all returned to 0. However, Zhou Fight did not feel that it was a pity. This was because this race divine artifact was extremely important to him. I don't have to worry anymore that the death of my avatar will involve my main body with the protection of this racial divine artifact. Zhou Fight looked at the Holy Fate Umbrella and thought. After experiencing the assassination of the Scarlet Supreme God Shadow Lord last time, his main body had been thinking about what to do if he encountered such an enemy who killed his clone but could implicate his main Buddhist death again. Zhou now had as many as 10 clones. The main body did not want anything to happen to one of the avatars, causing the main body to die with the other 9 avatars. That would be the opposite of his original intention of creating a clone. And now, the appearance of the Holy Fate umbrella perfectly resolved this problem. With this Holy Fate umbrella, the main body won't have to be afraid of attacks below the willpower level. It can hurt the main body and other clones. Even if one of our avatars accidentally dies, the other avatars and main body will be fine. Zhou Fight nodded. As for an attack at the level of will above the Supreme God, if such an existence really attacked the main body, they would not even need to attack. They would probably be able to easily kill the main body and all their clones with a glance. If he really encountered an enemy of that level, he did not need to think about how to protect himself at all. He could just lie down and die. Therefore, his main body had not thought about this at all and he stopped thinking about it. Zhou Fight directly put this high-level racial divine artifact into the first treasure vault and left it for his main body to use. As long as their main bodies relied on the Holy Fate umbrella and nothing happened to them, their clones would die. Their main bodies could use their origin power to easily revive them, so they did not need this racial divine artifact. After exchanging for the racial divine artifact, Zhou Fight looked at the divine item in the Supreme God Realm Monument for a while longer. Then, he looked at the mission for a while before reluctantly closing the information page of the Supreme God Realm Monument. There were many good things on the Supreme God Realm Monument. Especially the race divine artifacts. He had been in the High Continent for so long, but he had never seen so many race divine artifacts. Unfortunately, he didn't have any military merits or Supreme God mission medals. Otherwise, he really wanted to exchange for all the race divine artifacts in the Supreme God Realm Monument in one go. However, even though he lacked military merits and mission medals, Zhou Fight was not in a hurry to accept a new mission. This was because he had other things to do before that. He turned around and left the Supreme God Realm Monument, bringing Bai Yun and Qi Xiantian to the gluttonous Demon Palace. They were welcomed into the Demon Palace by 2 teams of true God tier at the entrance of the hall as soon as the 3 of them arrived at the Taotai Demon Palace. As soon as they entered the hall, Zhou Fight and the other 2 saw that the hall was already filled with more than 10,000 God spirits under Lord of 10,000 Evils. Among these God spirits, the weakest was Master God tier advanced grade. The strongest was actually 5 Supreme Gods present. These 5 Supreme Gods were sitting at the highest point of the Taotai Demon Palace with Lord of 10,000 Evils. Chapter 1480, 3 Missions. 1. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. Then, he suddenly slapped his head and said, "I forgot about that. Here you go." He flipped his right hand and saw a dark purple scroll appear in his hand. This is the territorial map of the Ultimate Void battlefield. It records the distribution of all the factions and mystic realms in the Ultimate Void battlefield, including the distribution of the Scarlet factions. He can change in real time. If you want to know the location of the other factions, you can understand from this territorial map. Sai, I wanted to give it to you as soon as you arrived, but you accepted a mission to go to Kai's city the moment you arrived. I didn't even have time to give it to you. The Lord of 10,000 Evils shook his head and smiled. He had indeed not expected Zhou Fight to start a war with the Ultimate Void race as soon as he arrived. The Lord of 10,000 Evils thought that after the other party came, he would rest for at least a day or 2 and adapt to the environment before finding trouble with the Ultimate Void race. Zhou Fight did not think too much about it. He took the map of the battlefield and opened it. Soon, he discovered the garrison symbol of the Scarlet faction about 300 million light-years away from the Demon Lord's base planet. Zhou Fight was enlightened. He nodded slightly after watching for a while. 300 million light-years. This distance looked very far, but it was not far for the Supreme God. If they wanted support, the the Supreme God could completely bring troops over directly. It would not take long at all. Moreover, this distance would allow both sides to have a good territory to develop themselves. How's the situation with the Crimson Overlord's faction? Zhou Feit asked. Hearing Zhou Feit's question, a cold smile appeared on Lord of 10,000 Evil's face. These forces of the Crimson Overlord did their best to cooperate with us in the beginning. But later on, when the situation became worse, the god spirits of the Crimson Overlord started to not do their best on the battlefield. Up until now, they no longer care about the outcome of this war. One reckon that they will immediately leave this place and return to their Crimson Great Cosmos on the day the Ultimate Void battlefield falls. If the Ultimate Void battlefield falls, won't the Ultimate Void race also invade their Crimson Great Cosmos? Why is their attitude so negative? Zhou Feit asked. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was silent for a moment before saying, "They are stronger than our Supreme Great Cosmos in terms of local defense because the Crimson Great Cosmos is filled with scarlet fog. So they began to prepare for the local defense after they saw the poor results of our Ultimate Void battlefield. They are probably already prepared to fight the Ultimate Void race in the Crimson Great Cosmos, and we are not sufficiently prepared in this aspect. Therefore, they probably can't wait for us to lose to the Ultimate Void race and let the Ultimate Void race completely occupy the Ultimate Void battlefield. They will use this as a springboard to launch an invasion war against the two universes." Zhou Feit's expression turned slightly serious. In that case, wouldn't the Ultimate Void battlefield be the most important front for the Supreme Great Cosmos external defense? Zhou Feit did not say anything and continued to look at the map of the battlefield in his hand. This battlefield map was divided into a total of 15 battlefield territories. These territories varied in size. At the same time, they were divided into 5 levels according to the size of the territory. They were Grade 1 Supreme God Battlefield Territory, Grade 2 Supreme God Battlefield Territory, Grade 3 Supreme God Battlefield Territory, Grade 4 Supreme God Battlefield Territory, and the highest level Sanctuary. Among them, there were 2 sacred domains, which were the Supreme Sacred Domain and the Void Sacred Domain. They were respectively controlled by Lord of 10,000 Evils and a Grade 4 Supreme God clone of the Void Emperor. There were a total of 2 Grade 4 Supreme God Battlefield Territories. There were also 2 Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Battlefield Territories. There were a total of 3 Grade 2 Supreme God Battlefield Territories. There were a total of 2 Grade 4 Supreme God Battlefield Territories. For example, Kai's city, which Zhou Feit had just occupied, was one of the cities in the Grade 1 Supreme God Battlefield Territory, Wanlong Territory. There were a total of 3 cities like this in the Myriad Dragon Domain. In other words, he would be able to reclaim 15% of the territory of the Ultimate Void battlefield as long as Zhou Feit occupied 2 more cities. That's not right. It's supposed to be 1.5 cities. Zhou Feit thought. This was because Savas was the city lord of Sava City, another city in the Wanlong territory. Zhou Feit had already taken down the city lord, Savas. Next, he only needed to deal with the other 2 Grade 1 Supreme Gods who were vice-city lords. This was somewhat difficult for Zhou Feit and his army, but it was not very difficult. What's with these arcane realms? Zhou Feit pointed at the golden mystic realm symbols on the map and asked. There were more than 100 signs of these mystic realms in total. Even the smallest Supreme God Wanlong battlefield territory had 3 mystic realms. These mystic realm symbols are called Void Mystic Realm symbols. They were specially created for us by the Supreme Will. He has placed a large number of divine artifacts, race divine artifacts, God spirit inheritances, military merits, mission medals, and other precious treasures in these void mystic realms. They're waiting for us to obtain them. The Supreme Will's original intention was to encourage us to take back these battlefield territories. However, we were too weak and could not take back these battlefield territories from the Ultimate Void race. Naturally, we could not obtain the treasures in these mystic realms. Chapter 1481, Three Missions. 2. At this point, a look of shame appeared on Lord of 10,000 Evil's face. He gritted his teeth and said, "I've let down the expectations of the Supreme Will. I also want to take back those battlefield territories, but one really can't." Zhou Feit looked at the expression on the Lord of 10,000 Evil's face and did not know if his current performance was real or fake. However, he didn't mind and casually comforted, "Take your time. I'm here now, ain't I? If we work hard together, we can definitely snatch back these battlefield territories and obtain the treasures in these void mystic realms." The Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded. Then, he looked at Zhou Feit and suddenly thought of something. He said seriously, "Brother Common People's Regal, you must ask me for help if you need my help. I won't want to take any share in the fruits of your war. I just want to do my part. I don't want to watch you suffer alone." "Okay." Zhou Feit's thoughts raced. In the end, he smiled and said, "Brother Demon Lord is willing to help me. I can't ask for more. You're too polite." This Lord of 10,000 Evils was a Grade 3 Supreme God realm after all, and he was also a reserve army of the Supreme Will. His combat strength was comparable to a top-notch Grade 4 Supreme God. He would definitely be able to save a lot of effort in attacking the other Ultimate Void Supreme Gods if he was willing to lend his assistance. In any case, the other party had already said that he would not share the results of his battle. It would be a waste not to use it since that was the case. As for whether he had any ill intentions, of course there was. However, with the Supreme Will watching in secret, the other party would definitely not do anything overboard. The Supreme Will was not a fool after all. It would not tolerate the vicious competition between his Supreme Lord Reserve Army. That would be out of the other party's intention to nurture a Supreme Lord. "That's enough for me. I happen to need Brother Demon Lord's help with something." Zhou Feit asked. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. He did not expect to be used so quickly. However, he didn't say anything. "Brother Common People, tell me. As you know, I just incite surrendered Savas City's Grade 2 Ultimate Void Supreme God, Savas. Now, there are only 2 Grade 1 Supreme Level Vice City Lords left in Savas City. I plan to lead the army to attack Savas City tomorrow after letting the army rest for the night and take it down. When the time comes, I hope that Brother Demon Lord and Brother Demon Lord's 1,000 Evil army will help. I don't know if that is possible." Zhou Feit asked. The Lord of 10,000 Evil's eyes lit up. "Yeah. Now that the City Lord of Savas City has been in sight surrendered by you, Brother Common People, the high-end forces of Savas City have been reduced by half. It can be said to be its most vulnerable period these days, and it's also the best opportunity to attack Savas City. I would have been so happy that I forgot about this if you hadn't reminded me." But, the Lord of 10,000 Evils frowned slightly. That Savas City still has 2 Grade 1 Supreme Gods and a complete army of Savas City Guards. With their Supreme God-level city defense facilities, even if our number of Supreme Gods far exceeds theirs, it's probably difficult for us to break through the other party's Savas City. Even if we can forcefully break through Savas City, we'll probably suffer heavy casualties in the end. His expression turned serious. It was very difficult for the Ultimate Void battlefield to replenish new troops. Even the Supreme Will could not continuously replenish new troops to the Ultimate Void battlefield. Therefore, when facing the problem of possible casualties, the Lord of 10,000 Evils would become very cautious. On the contrary, the Ultimate Void race was proficient in void travel, so replenishing their troops was very simple. The military strength of both sides increased and decreased. This was also one of the reasons why Lord of 10,000 Evils had fallen to this extent on this battlefield that originally belonged to the Supreme Will. It could even be said to be the most important reason. The right time, place, and people were not beneficial to Lord of 10,000 Evils. It was already very good that Lord of 10,000 Evils could last until now under such circumstances. This was also the reason why the Supreme Will had not withdrawn him. If it were any other will-level existence, they might not do better than him. Zhou Fight nodded and smiled. So I've decided to crusade against Savas tomorrow. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. Tomorrow? What is so special about tomorrow? It could actually give him the confidence to break through Savas city. Suddenly, he thought of the magical and unfathomable Lord's nomological methods he had seen from the common people's regal when they breached Kai's city. Could it be because of that method? At the thought of this, the Lord of 10,000 Evils nodded. Okay, let's go tomorrow. Zhou Fight nodded. Just as Lord of 10,000 Evils thought, he did want to use the Sun of Destiny that would be cooled down by tomorrow to conquer Savas city. This could also maximize his chances of winning. Even if the other supreme gods of the ultimate void race came to help, he would not be afraid. All living beings were equal in front of the Sun of Destiny. The more that came, the more he would instigate insight defection. Then, the Lord of 10,000 Evils and him chatted and laughed until late at night before the celebration banquet ended. After it was over, Zhou Fight brought Bai Yun and Qi Xiantian to the Supreme God Realm Monument. At this moment, about 18 god spirits had gathered at the Supreme God Realm Monument. They were exchanging items or handing over missions through the Supreme God Realm Monument. After seeing Zhou Fight, they surrounded him in surprise and chatted enthusiastically. What are you guys doing? Hurry up and disperse. Can't you see that Your Excellency, the common people's regal, is here to use the Supreme God Realm Monument? Are you guys trying to delay the important matter of the common people's regal? Right at that moment, a dignified voice sounded. Zhou Fight looked over. He realized that the person who spoke was a supreme god under Lord of 10,000 Evils. Its name was Flame Duke Supreme God. It was an existence that had become a supreme god by walking the flame law. These god spirits also realized what they had done under the warning of the Flame Duke Supreme God. They quickly left after apologizing. Thank you, Your Excellency Flame Duke Supreme God. Zhou Fight said politely. Your Excellency Common People's Regal, you're too polite. It's just a small matter. I just happened to pass by and said something. I won't disturb you anymore. With that, Flame Duke Supreme God left. Zhou Fight blinked when he saw this. He turned around and came in front of the Supreme God Realm Monument to check the mission interface without thinking too much. Conquer the Second Order Supreme God Level War Territory, Savas City. Second Order Supreme God Level Mission. Conquer Savas City, eliminate the Void General Solomon, the First Order Supreme God, and eliminate the Void General Kais, the Second Order Supreme God. Completed. Destroy the Void General Elzum, Second Level Supreme God, and reward 6 million points of military merit and 3 Supreme God Level Mission medals. Now that we know the distribution of the ultimate Void Battleground, we know what mission to take. Zhou Fight muttered to himself and began to search. A moment later, Zhou Fight had a goal. He looked at the 5 missions in front of him. Conquer the Grade 2 Supreme God Tier War Territory, Savas City. Grade 2 Supreme God Tier Mission. Conquer Savas City, eliminate the Void General Solomon, Grade 1 Supreme God, and eliminate the Void General Kais, Grade 2 Supreme God. Completed. Destroy the Void General Elzum, Grade 2 Supreme God, and reward 6 million points of military merit and 3 Supreme God Tier Mission medals. Conquer the Grade 3 Supreme God Tier War Territory, Wanlong Territory. Grade 3 Supreme God Tier Mission. Conquer the entire Wanlong Territory, eliminate the Void General Savas, Grade 1 Supreme God, and destroy General of the Void, Lei Di. Grade 2 Supreme God Tier, destroy General of the Void, Yuri, 3rd Level Supreme God, destroy General of the Void, Yuri, Grade 2 Supreme God, destroy General of the Void, Wanlong, Grade 3 Supreme God, reward 10 million points of military merit, 5 Supreme God Tier mission medals, and a chance to promote a racial artifact. Attacking the Void Mystic Realm, exclusive mission of the 10,000 Dragon War Territory. Attacking the 3 Void Mystic Realms in the 10,000 Dragon War Territory. Reward, 10 million military merits, 10 Supreme God mission medals, and 1 universal racial divine artifact. Zhou nodded slightly after reading it. Let's aim for these 3 missions in the short term. Then, he accepted all 3 missions. Even if other god spirits wanted to accept missions, they could only accept one mission after another. They could only accept a mission after completing one mission. Only the Supreme Lord Reserve Army had unlimited authority to accept missions. After receiving these 3 missions, Zhou Fight and the other 2 returned to Blazing Sun base planet No. 1 through the teleportation array and began to cultivate to prepare for the war. Chapter 1482, Battle Summary. Reincarnation Will. 1. At the same time, in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, Blazing Sun Divine Capital, Reincarnation Sacred Palace. Zhou was reading the summary of the day's battle. The main combat army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was divided into 2 parts. A small portion of them followed Zhou Fight to the Ultimate Void battlefield to fight the Ultimate Void race. The remaining army continued to stay in the High Continent and continue to conquer the Lord factions in the High Continent, especially the Scarlet factions, to expand the territory of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Under the joint efforts of the 2 armies, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had eliminated a total of 121 beginner-level Divine Kingdom Lord factions, 88 intermediate-grade Divine Kingdom Lord factions, 41 advanced Divine Kingdom Lord factions, and 9 Overlord-level Lord factions. Adding on the enemies destroyed in the Ultimate Void battlefield, they had eliminated more than 200 people of foreign races in the capital units, 2 billion god spirits, more than 3 million true god tiers, more than 600 master god tiers of the people of foreign races, and an ultimate void supreme god. Among them, the ordinary soldiers of the people of foreign races and a small number of god spirits of the people of foreign races were naturally destroyed by the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom on the High Continent. The remaining god spirits came from the ultimate void god spirits that were destroyed in Kai's city today. In the past, Zhou Fight did not even dare to think about eliminating so many god spirits. However, in this ultimate void battlefield where only god spirits could fight, Zhou Fight really experienced what it meant to be inferior to a dog. And after today's war, after statistics, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had obtained a total of 1 million mist cores of various levels, origin crystals, skill books, equipment, and basic materials from the capital units. 1,882,879,823,427,867 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 994,342 legendary tier and below Lord Talent spheres. A large number of Lord Talent crystal fragments of other levels. There were also 150 capital units and 3,422,897,880,000 units of divine crystals from the low-tier deity level to the high-tier deity level. 67,872,166,676 true god-tier divine crystals. 21,897,119,82 master god-tier divine crystals. 128. 782 grade 1 to grade 3 supreme god divine crystals. For quadrillion 12,871,212,310,000 million low-level to high-tier deity-level divine artifacts. 397 to 81 million true god-tier divine artifacts. 512,123 master god-tier divine artifacts. 5,122 supreme god divine artifacts. There were a total of about 3,301. 1 trillion divine spark fragments, god-tier herbs, god-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 102,382,321,810 Master God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 208,723 Supreme God-level God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. In terms of insight defection, under the effect of the Sun of Destiny, Zhou Fight directly obtained 1,028,739,887 low-tier deity-level ultimate void god spirits, 553,429,893 mid-tier deity-level ultimate void god spirits, 287,332,323 high-tier deity-level ultimate void god spirits, 2,388,734 ultimate void true god tiers, 512 ultimate void master tiers, and 1 grade 1 ultimate void supreme god. In addition, the Lords of the Star Alliance had also instigated 32 capital units 3,483,108. 9,023. 9,008,721 soldiers, 61,292,378 god spirits, 3. 782 true god tiers, and 21 supremacies. In the end, in terms of the advancement of god spirits, a total of 2,632,312,314 legendary tier advanced grade soldiers had advanced to low tier deity level elementary grade god spirit. There were also 88,731 high-tier deity-level advanced grade god spirits who had advanced to true god-tier elementary grade god spirits. Another 176 top-notch true gods of the human race and 216 top-notch true gods of the people of foreign races felt their master god-tier bottleneck and applied to enter the reincarnation sacred palace to cultivate in seclusion to try to break through to the master god-tier realm. There was a high chance that they would officially break through tomorrow. Zhou's original military strength was 944 capital units with 2,641,241,050,579,532 soldiers, 1,466,454,720 god spirits, 156,206 true gods, and 521 master gods. Including the 200 million god spirits that had been teleported to the ultimate void battlefield twice, 200,000 true god tiers and 200 master god tiers, it was 944 capital units with 2,641,241,050,050. 57,009,532 soldiers, 1,666,454,720 god spirits, 156,206 true gods, and 721 master gods. Now, with the addition of these divine spirit experts who had instigated insight defection, the military strength under him had reached 11 to the power of 1 capital units with 373,000, IO7, 32,000, 336, 294,754 god spirits, 2,637,453 true gods, 1,254 master gods, and 1 supreme god. Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. It had only been a day but the troops under him had almost received a huge increase. Especially when it came to the true god, before today, he only had more than 150,000 true god-tier subordinates, but now, he already had more than 2.6 million true god-tier subordinates. It almost increased by 20 times. No matter where it was, this was the growth speed of a god spirit that was enough to make all the god spirits dumbfounded. Even among willpower-level factions, it was probably no exception. This ultimate void battlefield is really a good place to use the Sun of Destiny. Zhou Fight smiled. At this rate, it would not be long before the number of god spirits under him would be comparable to the number of god spirits under Lord of 10,000 Evils. It was not impossible for it to even surpass the number of god spirits under Lord of 10,000 Evils. Of course, it's not likely to be surpassed in a short time. They had hundreds of millions of true gods after all. There were also 20,000 to 30,000 master god-tier experts. Only ordinary god spirits numbered about 30 billion. With Zhou Fight's current growth rate of god spirits, if he used insight defection a few more times, he might be able to reach this number in a week. Then, Zhou opened the map of the High Continent and looked at the territory of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom in it. The current Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom already occupied 1% of the territory of the High Continent. This range was ranked in the top 3 among all the Divine Kingdom Lord factions in the High Continent. Chapter 1483, Battle Summary. Reincarnation Will. 2. Zhou nodded slightly. While occupying the entire High Continent was still a dream, it was at least not as out of reach as before with the subordinates of the Supreme God. Then, he disappeared with a thought. The Yellow River. Yellow River Dockyard. When Zhou arrived, he saw Yen Luo and the other Yin Ghost clan members sitting on fishing boats fishing for Yellow River fish. Zhou smiled faintly looking at the solemn expressions of the Yin Ghost race members who did not dare to slack off. Yen Luo. Come and see this emperor quickly. He transmitted his voice, and it appeared in Yen Luo's mind. Yen Luo, who was focused on fishing, trembled and almost threw the fishing rod in his hand. He was just about to flare up when he suddenly thought of something after he came back to his senses. He immediately looked pleasantly surprised. He stood up and looked left and right. Soon, he saw Zhou, who was standing on the Yellow River dockyard and looking at them from afar. Seeing this, Yen Luo immediately put down the fishing rod and teleported in front of Zhou. Greetings, Your Majesty. Yen Luo said respectfully. Looks like this emperor is disturbing you from focusing on fishing. Zhou said with a faint smile. Your Majesty, you must be joking. I just want to catch a few more Yellow River fish for the god spirits in the country. Yen Luo said awkwardly. How's the harvest these days? Did the illusionist clan notice you? Zhou didn't mind and asked. Your Majesty, the harvest in the past few days has increased. Perhaps it's because there are no ghost gods fishing for Yellow River fish in the Yellow River realm, so we're the only ones fishing for these Yellow River fish. As for the illusionist clan, they did pass by us the day before yesterday, but they didn't notice us and left as if they couldn't see us. Yen Luo reported truthfully. Can't see you. Zhou pondered for a moment before understanding. This should be the promise made by Your Excellency reincarnation will to protect his Yellow River dockyard taking effect. Under the power of that will-level existence, the illusionist clan, which had already occupied the Yellow River dockyard, did not notice the Yin Ghost clan people like Yen Luo. Zhou clicked his tongue. As expected of a will-level existence, his methods were magical and unfathomable. You can go back to fishing. Zhou waved his hand and said. Yen Luo was stunned when he heard that. He hurriedly wanted to say that he was not addicted to fishing, but he quickly seemed to understand something. After saying yes respectfully, he turned around and flew back to the ship. He picked up the fishing rod and continued fishing. Zhou nodded slightly when he saw this. Then, he used the power of his will to summon the reincarnation will. Even though he didn't know if this method would work, he still wanted to give it a try. A moment later, Zhou still did not see the figure of the reincarnation will appear. Just as he was about to give up, an existence in a black divine robe appeared not far away. He looked at Zhou and smiled. Lord Reincarnation Will. Zhou was relieved and smiled. The reincarnation will didn't say anything. Instead, it walked over and circled Zhou a few times. Then, it exclaimed in surprise and relief. I haven't seen you for a few days, but your spiritual realm and will have improved again. It's really unbelievable. Zhou Zhou smiled gently. Anyone with the help of so many divine artifacts, divine artifacts, inheritances of God's spirits, treasures that assisted in cultivation, and so on could improve as quickly as him. Especially the supreme God-tier legacies that he had recently obtained. His main body had absorbed nearly half of them. With the enhancement of so many supreme God legacies, it would be strange if he did not improve. If not for the fact that he wanted to persevere on his Lord's nomological path and not take the nomological path inherited by other supreme gods, he would have probably advanced to the Master God tier level long ago. However, even so, he could also sense that he could advance from the low-level true God tier elementary grade to the Master God tier at any time. Why are you calling me? The reincarnation will sighed in its heart that it had not misjudged him back then and asked with a smile. Lord Reincarnation will, I want to ask if the god of death, Thanatos, is in your netherworld now. The god of death, Thanatos? The reincarnation will frown slightly, why are you asking after him? I want a mythical tier unique lord talent from him. This is very important tome. Zhou Zhou did not hide anything and said directly. He looked at the frown on the reincarnation will's face and his heart sank. The god of death Thanatos. Could something have happened? The reincarnation will glanced at Zhou Zhou and said something that made Zhou Zhou's expression change slightly. The god of death, Thanatos, has fallen. It's probably very difficult for you to want his mythical tier unique lord talent. The reincarnation will said. How did this happen? Zhou Zhou said with an ugly expression. His 10 sacred blessing series of lord talents was just short of this one. Why did something happen to him? The netherworld will betray the supreme will. After I became the lord of the netherworld, I carried out a cleansing of the netherworld. It was during this cleansing that I saw the corpse of the master god of death, Thanatos. After some investigation, it was confirmed that the netherworld will summon the master god tier Thanatos once. In the end, after Thanatos went, he never returned. When the gods of the netherworld saw Thanatos again, he was only a corpse. I've checked his corpse. There's nothing abnormal on the surface of his divine body, but his soul was destroyed. He was probably killed by the netherworld will. However, I don't know why he was killed for the time being. The other god spirits don't know either. I don't care, so I didn't pursue the matter. The reincarnation will said. I've checked his corpse. There's nothing abnormal on the surface of his divine body, but his soul was destroyed. He was probably killed by the netherworld will. However, I don't know why he was killed for the time being. The other god spirits don't know either. I don't care, so I didn't pursue the matter. Zhou Zhou had wanted to ask for the corpse of the master god, Thanatos, from the reincarnation will, but when he heard that the other party had already checked the other party's corpse and did not find anything special, he gave up. What he wanted was the Lord talent of the 10 sacred blessings. This talent cannot still be on the god of death, Thanatos. It could only be on one of the lords of the netherworld. There was no point in wanting the other party's corpse. Looks like I can only ask Bodhi Supreme for help and ask where the Lord talent of the 10 sacred blessings of the Master God tier Thanatos is. At this thought, Zhou Zhou looked up and asked, Your Excellency Reincarnation will, I might have to make a trip to the netherworld in the future. I wondered if it's convenient. Convenient, of course. The reincarnation will was stunned for a moment before immediately smiling. He patted Zhou Zhou's shoulder and said kindly, You and I don't have to be so distant. You can treat the netherworld as your second home. With me around, you can do whatever you want in the netherworld. When you come to the netherworld, you can tell me. I'll have a good drink with you then. How about that? It's better to oblige. Zhou Zhou smiled. The reincarnation will nodded. Then, he extended his right hand and saw a token with the symbol of the 6 paths of reincarnation appear in his hand. This is the 6 paths of reincarnation token. Seeing it is like seeing me. When you come to the netherworld, remember to bring it with you. It'll be more convenient for you to walk in the netherworld. Thank you, Your Excellency. Reincarnation will. Zhou thanked him. You still call me Your Excellency? The reincarnation will pretend it to be dissatisfied. Soul, just call me Brother Soul Heaven. That's my real name. Brother Soul Heaven. Zhou immediately said. It was definitely not a loss to acknowledge such a will-level existence as his brother, especially a will-level existence who controlled the netherworld. The reincarnation will nodded in satisfaction. That's not right. At this moment, Zhou suddenly thought of something. The reincarnation will said that the god of death, Thanatos, had died, but there had been no problems with him resurrecting god spirits recently. The resurrection of the soldiers under him had always been helped by the goddess of life and the master god tier of death. If the god of death, Thanatos, died, there should be a problem on his side, right? However, there was no problem until now. What was going on? He immediately told the reincarnation will about this. Brother Soul Heaven, what is going on? Zhou asked. Chapter 1484, The Reincarnation Will is my backer. Editor Atta's Studios. The god of death, Thanatos, has died. This is a conclusive fact. The reincarnation will said. He was a will-level existence and also a will-level existence that controlled reincarnation. He could still tell at a glance if a master god had really died. Perhaps it's because he had some solidified arrangements when he was alive. The god spirit you resurrected were all resurrected by the means he left behind when he was alive. It's not difficult for a top master god like he to leave behind such a method. The reincarnation will guessed. Zhou nodded thoughtfully. This should be the reason. Then, Zhou and the reincarnation will chatted for a while before the reincarnation will suddenly mention something. Zhou, your Yellow River token is still in your hands, right? Right. Zhou nodded. You participated in the last mysterious auction that involved the inheritance of the Yellow River's will, right? The reincarnation will said. Brother, you're indeed resourceful. I specially hid my identity at that auction. Even though Zhou was a little surprised that the other party knew about this, he was not surprised and said with a smile. The reincarnation was a will-level existence after all. It was too easy to know the name list of the auction. The reincarnation will smiled and said solemnly, then let me ask you, do you have the intention to fight for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will? Let me tell you first. Almost all the factions fighting for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will are top willpower level factions, and there are 2 top factions of the illusionary race among them. If you want to fight for it, you have to be mentally prepared. It's a matter of life and death once you enter after all. Our willpower level forces are better off. They won't kill you because you're a reserve member of the Supreme Lord. However, they don't care about your reserve identity in front of the illusionist clan. They might even want to kill you because of this identity. Zhou thought for a moment and said seriously, it doesn't really matter if it's dangerous or not. It's not the first time I've encountered a life and death crisis. However, to be honest, even though a will-level inheritance is precious, my path has already been confirmed. Even if I obtain this will-level inheritance, it will only be used as a reference and nutrition for my path. It would naturally be best if we can fight for it and obtain it. If we can't, I won't be too regretful. However, I wonder what brother thinks about this matter. I want to hear your opinion first. Brother, please guide me. The reincarnation will had specially mentioned this matter. It was definitely not just asking out of curiosity. Since that was the case, he could ask for the other party's opinion so that he could have more information to advise on this matter. He had to plan first before taking action. If it was really too dangerous, he would just give up. It was just a will-level inheritance. He was confident that he could obtain better things elsewhere in the future with him alone. The reincarnation will admired his sworn brother even more when he heard this. There were not many people like the other party who were willing to listen to the opinions of others after obtaining such earth-shattering achievements at his age. He had also seen a few other Supreme Lord reserves. Other than Lord of 10,000 Evils who was slightly better, the other two were all unruly people. They even had a sense of pride towards will-level existences. Wasn't he just a candidate successor of the Supreme Will? What was so great about him? Didn't they understand that even if they really inherited the status of the Supreme Will in the future and became the Supreme Lord, they had to be polite to will-level existences like them? These thoughts only flashed through the reincarnation will's mind. Facing Zhou Zhou's request, the reincarnation will pondered for a few seconds and said, "If you dare to compete with those three will-level factions for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will, I naturally support you. The will of Yellow River was also my good friend when he was alive. If possible, I naturally want his inheritance to fall into the hands of my trustworthy and recognized friend. If you choose to go in the end, you don't have to worry too much about those three willpower level forces. I, your brother, can also be your backer." Towards the end, the reincarnation will chuckled. His smile contained unparalleled confidence and silence. Even though he was a newly promoted willpower level existence, in terms of combat strength and status, he was really not afraid of any veteran will level existence. As for the illusionist clan, they were not afraid when he was a supreme god, let alone when he was reborn and became a will level existence. Brother can also enter the inheritance ground of the Yellow River's will. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. If he had this brother behind him while he was fighting for the inheritance of the Yellow River's will, he felt that the chances of him succeeding in the battle for the inheritance would increase by at least 30%. The inheritance ground of the Yellow Rivers will can only allow supreme gods to enter at best. I naturally can't enter. Reincarnation will shook his head. Just as Zhou Zhou revealed a look of pity, he smiled and said, "But your brother, I, am the reincarnation will. So what if we can't enter the land of inheritance? I can still take care of my brothers outside the Yellow River." When reincarnation will said this, even though his expression was calm, he gave Zhou Zhou a feeling of great confidence. As the reincarnation will, he was in charge of the netherworld, the Yellow River, and all the land of the dead. Even though the Yellow River had already fallen, causing his authority in the Yellow River region to be greatly weakened, it was not a problem for him to help his brothers at critical moments. Zhou Zhou immediately smiled and said, "Brother, since you've said so, it seems like I have to make a trip to the Yellow River land of inheritance." Reincarnation will nodded and said seriously, "Even though I can help you at the critical moment, you still have to rely on yourself most of the time, so don't be careless." The reincarnation will entrusted. "Of course." Zhou Zhou nodded. By the way, he suddenly thought of something and asked, "There are a total of 4 forces holding the Yellow River token. Apart from 2 of them being the illusionist clan, which willpower level force is the other one besides me? Who else can auction this only Yellow River token from among the will level factions?" Reincarnation will smiled and sighed. "It's naturally the strongest Sun Divine Court." Zhou Zhou nodded thoughtfully. This was not surprising. Regal Great Solar and Regal Great Lunar were known as the top 2 willpower level factions below the Supreme Gods after all. It was most valued by the Supreme Will. Among these 2 factions, the Sun Divine Court was slightly stronger than the Great Lunar Divine Court. Even though Zhou Zhou didn't expect they to obtain the Yellow River token, he wasn't surprised after hearing it. Then, the 2 gods chatted for a while before the will of Yellow River left with a smile. He seemed to have relaxed a lot after arranging the inheritance of the Yellow River's will. Next, he had to focus on coordinating the army and wait for the opportunity to take back the Yellow River region. Zhou Zhou returned to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.